Sani Bonani, good morning. Goeiemorgen. What's the else? Dumelang. You can go on and on. You are welcome. My name is Mpumelelo Mkhabela. I'm a jack of many trades. I'm a political analyst, I'm a journalist, communicator. When it suits me, I'm an academic. And again, when it suits me, I'm a businessman. But today, I'm the facilitator of this session. It's officially the SACTA information session, to which you are warmly welcome. It's there, the South African Cultivar and Technology Agency. It's a non-profit company that serves the public interest, and I'm sure as time goes on, you'll hear more about what SACTA does. And after all, we are here to be informed about its programs, its plans, its visions, and how it relates to our economy, specifically the agri-sector, more specifically. Before I go on and get carried away, we have got to do some basic rules for safety, comfort, security, the basics. So when you are on board a flight, the first thing they tell you is how they think they can rescue you in the event of a crash. So in this instance, we are not on board a flight, but safety rules. We have got 2 exit doors just behind you in the unlikely event that you need to run away. And on the right, after you exit, there's a loo if you want a comfort break for yourself. There's also other toilets if you go to the left. And then in the event that there's a long queue outside, you are welcome to go further downstairs, and there's mobile toilets on the outside for your convenience. We all know that we're struggling with the water issue at the moment. So yeah, I hope that won't bother you, and feel comfortable to ask. There's also other people outside there who would be ready to help you. In the event that perhaps you lose concentration a bit and you feel like dozing off like I normally do when I attend long meetings, we've got bottomless coffee. So you can ask around, they'll help you with the coffee. If your sugar levels do some tricks on you, there's also some soft drinks outside. You can get some water or whatever you want. So yeah, just for your comfort and for you to continue to participate in this program. The other rules are the rules of how we're gonna engage here. Since this is an information session, and I would add a knowledge sharing session, I think it's more appropriate to call it that. There will be a lot of engagements. We expect active participation. You may not necessarily ask a question, but it will help you if you are actively engaged, at least with the content in your mind. And but if you were to ask a question, it will even be more enlightening for you and also for other participants who may have similar question but may not know how to phrase it or something like that. We have you here, but we also have other people that are joining us online. We're also welcoming them. I don't know how many there are, but you are all welcome out there, the digital natives because they were born in the age of digital networks. So I think if I look at the age here, I think we've got we've got both digital natives and digital immigrants. But I'm a hybrid. So yeah, you are all welcome. And if there's an exchange, it will obviously be very respectful. And the whole idea is that by the time we leave here, we are very informed about what SACTA does and the relationships that it has created and what it portends for the agri-sector and for our economy and our positioning globally. That's very, very important. If you leave here without having some insights on SACTA and having some ideas, and then it means we shall have failed. So, but I hope we will win and we will pass. All right, the next task I have in hand is to introduce you to somebody who's going to do the formal welcoming. Since no one welcomed me No one clapped for me. I hope you're going to clap for the next person. I didn't say you should clap for me. The next person who's really going to do the formal welcoming, he's an industry leader, and he has worked in both the public sector and the private sectors. And he has been in the seed industry for a very, very long time. When I look at his CV, I think it's more than 3 decades. He has been in this industry. At some point, he was working for a reputable seed company called Pana. And at some point, he was MD of that company. And at some point, he was elected to be the vice chairperson, vice president of the International Seed Federation. That was in 2005. And later on, he became its president. He must have impressed them for them to elevate him to that level. Ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome Mr. John van Rooyen, who is the chairperson of SACTA, our industry leader, to give us a warm welcome. Dion, please come upstage.
Thank you very much, Pumelela. I'm very grateful indeed after that introduction and all the years of experience, and also starting in the different languages talking to us, that you didn't call me up as in Kulu or Baba, Dion. Thank you very much. I appreciate you calling me by my first name. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for attending. I really want to welcome all of you and also everybody that's online today on behalf of the SACTA directors and also the management team. Also our administrators, AMS, who do a lot of our real physical hard work. This is a very special information session. You'll get a bit of insight into SACTA, but also into the financial side of it. And there really no holds barred when it comes to SACTA. You can ask any question, and normally we'll answer it. And if we don't answer it, we don't know the answer. But whether you're attending in person, online, it is really, it's always an effort to attend these things. And we're very appreciative that you actually could find the time to come along and attend it. Now, SACTA, as many of you will know, is actually, our prime objective is to collect statutory levies on certain open pollinated grains. And those levies are then allocated, and some of that levy goes back to seed and technology suppliers. The biggest portion of it goes back there to actually encourage the research and development in those crops for the South African farmers. And I can just say, before we started doing that, there was no incentive for the companies to actually invest in those crops, because farmers can retain their seed planted again. And ever since we've done it, there's been very rapid progress on the introduction of new varieties, and the technology is also starting to flow in. Nobody likes to pay a levy, but I think the farmers have bought into it because they realise the benefits, and everybody is supportive of the levy in the agricultural industry. And I think how the seed companies apply it, and how much technology comes in, and how many new varieties come in, at the end of the day is the proof of the pudding. So, and I think we're very happy with the progress that's been made on that front. Another thing that's been a very important function of ours is on the transformation side and farmer development, where SACTA actually provides quite a bit of the financing. We work with other stakeholders in agriculture, and that's also starting to bear fruit, and you'll hear quite a bit about that too. And I think a lot of the questions will also be on that. That is high profile. It contributes to food security in the rural areas. And I can just say that the farming sector is really the glue that keeps together our rural communities all the time. It's employment, it's food security, and it's also business opportunities for a lot of people in the rural areas and also in the small towns. So that is good work that is being done at the moment. My wife and I have just returned from overseas, and we were overseas for a bit more, around about 3 weeks. And it was quite nice to come back, and suddenly we sort of detected an optimism and a spirit in the country from when we arrived at the airport to arriving in Durban airport, even in our town. It's almost as if there's a new optimism. And I know there's a lot of doomsayers about the new government that we've got. But I think in our context, there's quite a lot to be said for collaboration between various parties to actually drive the country forward. And we can only wait. The jury is out on the success of it and the long-term effect of it. But I must say, everybody has started very enthusiastically. What was also nice is coming back and seeing that you also had the doomsayers saying all this infrastructure repairs and all that is ongoing because of the election. Now, very nice to actually see that it's carrying on after the election and it's actually being finished in many cases. And you can see that development all the way from KZN up here. There's a lot of work going on, and today we're the victim of some of the not fixing leaks, but actually replacing pipelines. So I think there's really on the infrastructure side, I think things are coming right. We don't have the failures in power that we've had, so that's been very positive too. So at the end of the day, what will really pull us all up, and there's a lot of things that the government has got to address. We're talking about poverty, very abject poverty in lots of areas in the country that have to be addressed. There's unemployment, which obviously relates to the poverty too, and there's the security issues. There are various challenges that need to be addressed. But the one thing that will sort of automatically start improving things is if we can get this economy growing. And that's at all levels, whether it's in communities, rural farming, wherever, if we can get the economy going. And I think where SACTA can play an important role is in the farming sector, be it commercial or be it developing farmers. And we can't do it all. We're very grateful for all the assistance we get from all our stakeholders. And we've had some very good visits to some of the farming projects. So without that, I'm just going to say, please enjoy your morning with us. Feel free to ask questions, interact. You can really, I want to say, interrupt if it's going to be a quick question, rather than forget to ask. But you can also write it down and ask at the end of a session. Thank you very much and enjoy the morning. Thanks.
Thank you, Dion. I think you have been very humble with your remarks about the role of SACTA. I picked up something in the profile of SACTA and what your intentions are with the organization, and some very lofty words there, which is to ensure all farmers have access to cutting-edge pipeline technologies and genetic know-how. And that's a very, very, very powerful mission statement there on what you seek to achieve. But it's very important that you succeed in your mission, because that means success for the industry, success for the country, success for the economy. But obviously everyone has to play their role. So I learned today that you are too humble. Yeah, and the next speaker is going to be somebody, another industry leader, who's going to share some insights on the local and global market, specifically the global markets, for seeds, all seeds and cereals. And this is somebody who, again, like Dion, has got experience in the private sector and also in the public sector. And I don't know what he hasn't done. He's been a trader, he's been a lecturer, he has been an entrepreneur, he's been everything. At the moment, he's the leader of the South African Cereal and Oil Seeds Trade Association, SACTA, for short. And that's Andre van der Vevel. He's going to come and give us some insights about the global picture of these grains and how they're doing and the prospects and all of that. He warned me earlier that he's going to give a lengthy presentation, so I shouldn't waste his time. Call him up quickly.
Thanks for the invite to SACTA. It's indeed a privilege to be here. And as pointed out in my presentation, I'd like to focus specifically on the soybean market, but of the local market and also the international market. I think there's been more development on the international market over the last 2 years or so, but then this year is again an odd year. And so I think what we want to do is just cover the local market first. There's quite a bit of information in my slides. I'm going to skip over some of that, but the information is there and available for you. And if you need to contact me again or contact one of my trading members, certainly that will form a good basis to recent developments. First of all, let me just start and say who SACTA is. Okay, so we represent the grain and oilseed traders and also supporting services to the grain and oilseed traders. And then we promote free and fair trade to the benefit of all South Africans. Our international and local trade, we consider that equally important, and it is interlinked, as we'll see through my presentation. And then export parity, I'll also refer to bigger crops. That is, in our opinion, the cheapest form of food security when prices drop to export levels, and you can export profitably. I should add that last part. And some crops you cannot import, and you cannot produce enough from, so we import them like wheat. But even in the case of wheat and other imported crops, it's very important that the process is very efficient so as to limit the cost factor to the general population and everyone, and also address the food security issue. Who are the members of SACTA? We have our core business members are the physical trade grain traders, and there's about 2/3 of the 30 members are physical traders, and we divide them in two categories: the international traders and the local traders. But they work together. They often subcontract among each other to perform on international contracts and local contracts. And then we have associate members. Those are the members that are providing and supporting services to the traders. In my presentation here, I'd like to address the following points. First of all, the imports, since we have this difficult year as it is now. Also, the events in GMO crops, bigger crops, which we are in favor of, commodity flow of the crops or the products, the exports, harbor dynamics, and the pricing. So let me just move forward then to the importing side right away. As we can see from this diagram, there are three basic production areas that are servicing the country as such. And in a year of imports, what we find is that this, at the moment, all the product is flowing to the reef or to the inland crushing plants. A little bit from there, which is not quite clear on the map, will go north to Zimbabwe and Mozambique. And then what we see at the moment is we've started to import soybean cake at the coastal area, specifically Cape Town, Gqeberta, and that is now being offered also by some of my members through Durban into KZN, and the talk is that all the way into the reef. But that'll depend on future pricing. So that is when we have a crop of, say, 2 million and less, we find this kind of product flow in the country. If we look at the S&D, we all know that the S&D supply and demand table for soybeans for last year was very, very favorable in terms of big crops, and also in terms of enough surpluses and then for export. Now, NAMC at the moment has got a very limited sort of outlook in terms of the crop, and then the crushing as well, and the stocks. We've taken that outlook of theirs and we adjusted it slightly on the right for the SACTA. And we've taken a slightly different view because we added the imports. We're not really in the business of compiling S&Ds. We leave that for our members. But for the purpose of this presentation, we said that in terms of imports, we think there will be significant soybean cake imports at the coastal areas, and will replace a lot of the cake that, or most of the cake that went down in the past year to service the market in the Cape area and further up in the coast. So we put down the equivalent of 200,000 tons in soybeans as an import there. Some people are saying that this may even be much higher, up to 350 to 400,000 tons of cake equivalent that may be imported. I don't think personally it will be that high. It'll depend on the prices. As prices move up, obviously there's a demand for imports, which is more cost effective. But then as you start importing, it starts impacting on the prices again. And then on the export side, we've increased the number from the NAMC predictions to 110,000. That in itself includes a shipment at the end of last season, but fell into the beginning of the year, the marketing year for soybeans, early March, a 30,000 ton shipment that went to Vietnam, which is part of that number. And then we also estimated about 80,000 tons of both soybeans and meal converted to soybeans that'll go into SADC, specifically Zimbabwe and Mozambique. Now that number obviously lead to the fact that if we see those numbers, we're going to probably crush a little bit less, and we've decreased the crushing number for this year a little bit. And we also then would end up with higher closing stocks by February 2025. So that's sort of the outlook that we see going forward in the market in this difficult year of the importing. So if I just jump into the import process itself, we have the inquiries for soybeans in itself, and that is a more difficult product to import because we have the constraints in terms of the GMO cultivar synchronization. Now that in itself, South Africa has 23 events that are approved in South Africa, but you need to get it synchronized with the exporting country. So the inquiries specifically from Brazil, where they also have 23 events on the soybeans, but these two sets of events don't synchronize. So there are 8 events that are not listed on the South African list. So now you have to go and find out why those events are not listed yet. And there's a process that are normally followed in the exporting country. It's first of all approved, then it's commercially released, and then it's planted. And the planted can also be split up. It's either planted for commercial purposes, or it is just simply planted for trial runs and multiplication. So you've got to make ensure that that product is not in the commercial trade yet. And if that's the case, you've got to approach the seed developers to confirm that that product is not there. Or you've got to approach the Brazilian embassy. I see Darian is here, which has also assisted us in trying to synchronize this list. Thanks for that, Darian, and your embassy. Now that is Carlos not here yet? Coming. Okay, thanks to him as well. And that also applies to Argentina. It also applies in the export year. So the process is very much the same, and it's a very important process. Without that, we know that it's basically all GMO cultivars that are planted nowadays and imported. And so if that process is not synchronized between the trading countries, then trade will be very limited, and you can actually run into quite serious problems of not being able to access the product. Then I'm going to jump to the prices. So we said that why were we importing? This is a graph from Grain SA that I'm using here. Thanks for that, Grain SA. And you can see we moved away, the black line, the local price, the SAFEX price, moved away from an export parity price last year, and we are just about short of the import parity price for Brazilian soybeans in Durban. Now, we all know that importing soybean cake is cheaper than soybeans itself, but it depends on how that prices move at the end of the day and what the gap is, because if you import cake, it's much more difficult to close your crushing plant and supply your customers with imported cake. So sometimes you may consider supplementing with imported beans, which is the case now. So everything is all options are considered, as they say. Now, in terms of the process itself to import, that's also a lengthy process sometimes, as I elaborated already earlier on. First, you've got to get your import permit, the phytosanitary one, and then the biosafety permit for the GMOs, and that's a difficult one. Sometimes testing at the export port is required, either for the importing government or for your client. So you want to consider doing that sometimes. And then testing at the importing country, you would find that in the case of South Africa, Dalrad is taking a sample. It's split into two. Part of the sample then goes to SAGL, which does the quality analysis to compare imported product to the local product that's produced. And then Dalrad does their own phytosanitary test as well. We're not testing for GMO imported into South Africa as yet. And then part of the requirement is that the imported product is to go from the port facility directly to the crusher or the processor, and that also, of course, apply to maize or corn being imported in South Africa, which is at the moment also being imported. In terms of my own presentation, we said that we're in favor of bigger crops as such, and this is part of the reasons why we're looking at this. I mentioned that earlier on. I just want to make sure I didn't skip a slide here. We think that the crops will still increase, but before I get to that point, I just want to say, and that is why it's a privilege also to be here today, and I thank SACTA for the work that they've been doing, because to get bigger crops, I think is beneficial for everyone, and we need the technology, and most of that technology is the seed technology, and therefore I want to thank them for their work as well. And if we look now at the reasons why we as traders think that we will still get bigger crops. So first of all, we noticed that there's still last year, there were some, or this year, depending on when you want to look at planting time, there were farmers that planted soybeans for the first time. And I believe there may still be more of those coming, maybe next year, or alternatively increase their production. So that is an important part of seeing the bigger crops. In terms of the trend line, if you look at the trend for the last 8 years, we notice that production has increased by 17% compounded per year, and the demand has increased by 9%. The 9% is obviously linked to the economy that is at the moment growing a little bit slowly, but we foresee that this trend will continue, both these trends, and therefore that we will have bigger crops and that we will also have bigger surpluses to trade with. The next reason that was on my list was the profitability. So if we look at these set of numbers, I used the Grain SA numbers, adjusted them slightly for the Eastern Free State as well as the yield, but it is more profitable to produce soybeans than it is to produce maize. So, and that is an incentive that has been there last year and this year, and for the time being we think that will remain as well. This is not necessarily true in every part of the country. That's why I put up there the Eastern Free State, and I picked that area because that is the export corridor for the soybeans. Then as far as technology is concerned, we measured that in terms of yield per hectare, and we see that there's been, and we took the graph from 2010, and we see that there's been a upwards trend for the last 15 odd years And again, we believe that that trend will continue, which will then obviously contribute to larger or bigger crops. Strange enough, we thought that the trend in Mpumalanga will slow down a bit because it's a more matured market compared to the national trend, but its trend line is just basically the same. So it proves again the value of the technology. And then in terms of crop rotation, so if we express the hectares planted by soybeans as a percentage of overall hectares for the last 4 years, and we look at the 3 main provinces, we notice that even in Mpumalanga, the sort of matured market or production area, it is also slowly increasing. The next one, the Free State in the middle, the red, has showed a reasonable dramatic increase from 22 to 30, and then the biggest increase was in Northwest from 11% to 23. So we believe as traders that that percentage of the last 2 provinces will probably increase more, maybe getting closer to where Mpumalanga is at the moment. Now I'm jumping to the current situation, not the current, let me say, the outlook for next year, which is what a lot of people are speculating about. Are we going to go back to bigger crops? So let's look at the picture as it is then depicted in terms of what will happen if the crop is 2.5 to 3 million tons, because something like 3 million tons is certainly a number that we're looking forward to as traders. We believe that will not bring more business for us as traders, definitely, but also for everyone in the value chain, the bigger the crop is. So we have those 3 areas. The blue is the one that is typically best to service the Durban export market, but Durban is still the most competitive, and based on that, we believe that product will then obviously flow to Durban. Some of it will go to Maputo. We've seen that in the last 2 seasons that there were vessels, 3 each, that left out of Maputo, and so from that northern parts of Mpumalanga, we can service that market as well. The one that we want to focus more on is East London, the yellow. So that market can be well serviced out of the Free State and Northwest, and I'll say more about the investment in East London. But it's very suitable and it's a very necessary market to further develop. And then the red color, kind of red, that will obviously go to the reef, very suited to that product. There will be some product going north, but it will be less in the case of a big crop, because most of the times the northern countries, Zimbabwe and Mozambique, also have better seasons at such a period in time. And then the meal market that was serviced even with the last season and is now being partially taken over by imports will again be there for servicing, sending cake down to the coastal areas. So that's how we see the picture. The 3 export markets, I put already the disadvantage of the 2 other ports, Maputo and East London. They at $10 to $12 disadvantage to Durban, and that is a slight problem for them. But $10, 200 Rand, let's say, is not a big movement on soybeans. So the price naturally have to drop 200 Rand more in able to be competitive to Durban. But we'll talk about Durban just now. If we look at the export countries, in the last 2 years, we've opened up 6 markets. We've exported just short of 600,000 tons in the last marketing year. There you can see the list of countries, and at the tail end of the marketing season, Indonesia and Egypt were added as well. If we look at what is lucrative here, Indonesia, which is now upcoming, is probably the most lucrative market. Then Malaysia and probably Bangladesh, and then China is the more cheaper market, but certainly they can do the volumes. Importing 100 million tons is a lot of beans. We've sent only 3 ships, 150,000 tons last year. But so that market is also open, and it was a concerted effort by not only SACTA, its members, but also the industry players, that many of them are here, and then working with DALRA to open these markets. If we look at the quality that's demanded in terms of the soybeans on the export market, I want to look first at protein. You can see protein there in the middle. Our number is 36, 37% protein. It's slightly higher than what our competitors are offering, specifically, again, Brazil. And then, of course, the US as well, they're listed there. Our oil content is slightly lower. We are 2% less than South America, and we are 1% less than the US. But most of the contracts trade on 18.5% oil, but you can have an adjustment in your contract. Your contract is not rejected, your shipment, if you drop below the 18.5. And then our moisture are favoring our shipments as well. It's very low compared to the competitors. Sometimes we can see the number there of 8.2. That in itself may also at times be a problem. So if I can just try and summarize it, our quality of our beans are acceptable for the international market. Our low moisture favors us, but it can also be a problem if we look at the split beans that are caused when the moisture levels drop too low. Then Southeast Asia, protein is more important than oil because of their abundance of palm oil. So they are really looking for us to supply the protein. Contracts allow you to make certain adjustments if your oil level is not quite there where it should be. And then the last 2 points, what we struggled to obtain initially was sample quality after the product was delivered to the silos. So, and that is something that the traders are very much after, to know what quality they would get from a particular silo or region, so that they can then sell that quality and include it to the export or international client. So SACTA had discussions with SAGL, and I see Viana's here as well. Yes, I mean, she kindly agreed that SAGL will now speed up the samples and start analyzing them at an earlier stage as soon as they are harvested. And that is very helpful for the international trade, and it's already been published on the website this season, but unfortunately we haven't exported yet. So thanks for that. The transport slide I just put up because if we look at the freight rail, the second from the top, we see that there's no soybeans that are being transported by rail. Most of it, all of it, is by road at the 85%, and then there's a certain percentage at the top, the 15%, when there's a silo next to a crushing plant, like in Bronkhorstspruit, that is then by conveyor belt moved there. And that is a problem as well, because we definitely need the rail to be competitive. But let me just say something about our freight competitive, our location advantage on the Southeast Asia market, which is then, as I said, and as you saw from the numbers, will be our main market going forward. We can see our competitors there, Brazil, Argentina, and the US. And because of our location, we have a distinct freight advantage from those countries servicing the Southeast Asia market. Now, so that is very helpful indeed to be competitive. Now, and the main one there, Brazil, $10 to $14 cheaper on freight rate into Southeast Asia. Now our harbors. I started off by saying that's our big issue for the future, and it's maybe put it very softly. Durban is saturated. When there are big crops, Durban is struggling to handle it. It has 3 terminals. Two of them belong to SABT. It's called the old RBT and DBS. And then the third one belongs to Transnet, called Agriport. Now, Agriport and RBT are the terminals that has got draft constraints, and so they can only handle Panamax vessels or maximum 42,000 tons. And then DBS is the deep sea port or terminal, and that can do Supramax 50 to 55,000 tons. So, and then on top of that, SABT is well developed to handle maize crops in terms of storage, commingling, and then they also do most of the wheat imports and the rice imports now. So that's where their preference lie, not really with soybeans. It's not that they are anti-soybeans, but they've been doing business in terms of maize. So maize get preference, and we'll see what will happen in the coming season again. But it's unlikely to change. If we have a good crop, obviously we'll have a good maize crop as well. Then Agriport is more open to whatever you want to book. They can switch around from vessel to vessel, but they also prefer 3 or 4 vessels sequentially, because it takes time and cost to clean the vessel, 2 to 3 days, and that's a very long period in the export business if you have a vessel out there waiting you to clean your terminal. So there's really some issues in terms of how will Durban, what will we do if we have another big crop in Durban. Fortunately for us, as I pointed out, the market that we're addressing in Southeast Asia has turned out to be a smaller vessel market due to the fact that they themselves have draft constraints and financial constraints. So most of just about every vessel, except the 3 ones that went to China, were in that sort of category of about 30,000. So we've developed a kind of a niche market supplying the Southeast Asia with that sort of vessel, and that for the time being helps our ports a lot now. But we still believe that soybeans should be exported in terms of Free State and northwest. The potential lies with developing East London or further developing it. SACTA and the members and some of the trade assisted in opening that port for exports the first time in 10 years. And we've exported, the last 2 years, we've exported several vessels, including soybean vessels, out of East London, but it is in desperate need for further investment. We've talked about Maputo before and the disadvantage in terms of the other ports. So one solution, of course, is the rail. Rail is just across the world much more cost competitive, and the combination between rail and road is important. But you need, we're not saying you should do 100% rail like many years ago in South Africa. East London, for example, was developed only for rail intake. You'll find a combination in the modern day world, but you need to have a certain percentage of rail. And if we look at the record of TFR in the last exporting season, about 16 months ending October last year, you see the bottom line there. They've done 13,000 tons a month going to Durban. The capacity in Durban is 118,000. And the average export number per month was 224,000 tons. So we're talking about, in terms of capacity, they did 11%, and in terms of demand, only 6%. Now that in itself is unacceptable. We know that there's a new management at Transnet, but it'll take quite a bit of time to rectify this position, I believe. But the sooner we get into that, every little bit will help. Then just a comment on the prices and the basis premiums. We tend to look at Chicago as our price indicator, but I just wanted to remind people that in terms of the pricing, the FOB price in the exporting country is really the big factor. The difference between that price and the Chicago price is what we refer the basis or the premium or basis trading sometimes. And sometimes you would find that Chicago or CME group contract would decline, but the basis in a particular export port would increase. So you have to be very careful in how you compare these numbers. And then from there, you would price it to the CIF price in the importing country as well. But we'll not get into all the detail now. Just bear in mind that then it's not only the Chicago price that matters. Brazilian premiums are at its lowest in February. So we want to be just shortly after that, it starts increasing. That's after their peak harvesting season, and that's when we want to be in the market. And it will be a question of who will be able to ship their product in terms of soybeans or the maize. If we look at the prices at the moment are at a level where it has declined considerably, but the exchange rate has weakened as well. So if we want to take a go at the price in May next year, that will be very, very difficult. But just for purposes of this presentation, I've tried to work out a price and work with my traders. So we say that where the prices are now, which is about a $400 to $430 FOB price, we get a 7,785 Rand price. The last 2 days prices have again declined. And if we then deduct all the cost, and including the total production cost as calculated by Grain SA, then we see that there's no margin left, no fat left at the end of the day. If prices decline more, that means that we'll have to save cost in the value chain. That gives us an idea of the forthcoming year if it is a good season as predicted. So my conclusion then, I have a low scenario where I say moving product to the harbors is a problem, the harbor capacity is a problem, and who's going to win this battle, maize or soybeans, in the peak period when everyone wants to export. And then the high scenario, we have looking forward to larger crops, quality is acceptable, beans are more profitable, beans are harvested first, so maybe we can get our foot into the door when it comes to exports, and then we are building a nice niche market for smaller vessels. So the drivers for me going forward is this events, single and stacked events, a synchronization for that. That's important for the country as a whole, not only for soybeans. And we need to differentiate our soybeans in terms of quality. The Indonesian market is a good example of that, looking only for top quality soybean product. And then we should revisit East London in terms of their potential. Thank you.
Wessel Lemmer from Agnes Grain. Andre, just first, thank you for a very good presentation. You mentioned that the East London harbour is to a $10 to $12 disadvantage to Durban. Now, if we can increase that efficiency of Transnet and the port in the East London harbour, and with the production, I assume then from soybeans from the western production regions, northwest and central western Free State, will we make up that difference to make East London more competitive? It's not a fair question, but will we make it up in the $10 to $12 if we can transport by rail to those harbour? Thank you.
Thank you, Wessel. Actually, it's an easy question. There are more than one way you can make up that difference. Rail is one of them, but also just the port facilities are run down. If you invest in those facilities, your loading rate per day for vessels will be higher, which will bring down this gap there. So there's more than one way that you can address that issue. It's definitely something that can be overcome.
All right. The next question. There you go.
Yeah, that's...
No, we want to record you. I didn't mention earlier that actually this session is being recorded for the people that were not able to attend. They can download it later.
Now you're telling me.
Okay, thank you. My name is Aaron from FarmSol. And maybe mine also might be a little bit unfair question, and perhaps maybe the information is already out there. But you had a slide talking about profitability of soybeans and then quality, and therefore, and I just wanted to ask regarding the issue around cultivar technology, and if there are any plans maybe locally to incentivize things like your protein content or oil content. Is there things like that? I know in the sunflower, for example, is already done, but locally is there work done around incentivizing quality?
Yeah, I think it'll come. I've participated in industry discussions where people have raised that very same issue. So I think there's a local need to more clarity in terms of quality, but there's definitely international demand as well to better understand the quality that is being loaded and that's available and being loaded. So I don't think it'll be overnight, but it is a process that I'm sure will go the same route you referred to, sunflower seed, where we will see differentiation in quality but on those two criteria of oil and protein. But that requires it requires cooperation. It requires a lot of investment. So it's not something that you can easily do. So, but yes, I think it'll go that direction.
There's a related question, Andre, related to that one. This one is coming from online, our online participant, Jeremiah Shasha, who is asking what influences the difference in protein/oil content across the countries presented.
Say
I
that
think he's
again, what
questioning
influence?
about the influences, what influences the protein content across the different countries that are producers.
What causes the protein levels?
Yeah, what influences the
Yeah,
differences?
the sun and the rain is for one reason, but also the soil levels, the fertilizer, all those different factors are impacting on protein, the cultivar itself. So there's many different factors that are impacting on protein levels.
And storage is not a factor there, right?
No.
Okay.
No.
Any other question?
Good morning, everyone. I'll try my best English. I'm from Northwest, Potchefstroom, Ventersdorp, Farmer Day. We didn't mention a lot of sunflowers, but sunflower is getting more difficult to breed for farmers because of the profitability. And it's actually like in the drier parts of Northwest and Western Free State, it's a good crop for us all the years. But with a lot of sclerotinia in the wet years, and now it's just the profitability is getting very difficult. So if we can get cultivars with bigger or better production, it will help a lot. If that doctor from Dion, or I don't know what is, they can look into that also. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't let go of any crop. All of them plays an important part. And again, just clearly in the discussions, everyone is trying to promote these crops on their own and collectively. So I don't think sunflower is being left aside. In fact, I know about a lot of effort that's gone into sunflower seed from my colleagues in trying to improve some of those conditions that you're referring to.
Yeah. I would allow one quick question, if this before we close. Are we sure that we all understand now how these grains are traded and? Okay, it looks like we don't have a question. As I see it, maybe I should ask the last one. Do you make a lot of money with trading?
Yeah, you can make a lot one year and lose it the next year. That's why it mustn't be all clear. It must be a bit murky. So
yeah. I've been thinking maybe I should change careers, you know. All right. Before you take your seat, thank you very much for your informed presentation, very informative presentation. Before you take a seat, I've got a little gift for you from Beatrix. No. Oh. Must stand properly. There's protocol. We need to take a nice picture of you. There you go. Gustav, do they look nice? Okay. Thank you. All right. We move on. And thanks, Andre, once again. We move on with our program. And I hope people don't regret not asking questions. And the session closes, and then you feel, I should have asked this question. But in any event, during networking sessions, tea breaks, you are welcome to approach Andre in case you're scared of asking in a public platform. And I'm sure he would gladly answer your questions. And those who may not have been aware of the existence of this organization, now you know. You can check it yourself, and you can contact them and find out how they can be of assistance to you, depending on the area of work that you are in. All right, now we are going to move on to the next item. And this is where we're going to be looking at assessing SACTA's performance. It's one thing to have lofty ideas about what you want to do, and it's quite another to be assessed and have other people to tell whether you are really up to the job that you say you are up to. So this is the time when we give somebody who will come and give us an assessment of SACTA's performance. And I will call him just now. So he's going to talk about the history and as well as feedback on SACTA, levy collection, and the whole idea of cultivars and that have been released. And hopefully we will also learn about the impact of that. And his name is Ferry Meyer. He is the managing director of BFAP. These are the guys that do a lot of research in the sector. When I look at the profile of what they do a lot of market intelligence, they do a lot of modeling, they do a lot of economic analysis. Really, they go in depth into the different areas of the sector, the value chains, looking at production to market and all of those things, and they really do a lot of work. So I'd like to call him up to give us his assessment of SACTA's performance. And where is he? Oh, there you go. I've been looking and checking if you are here. So Ferdy has been an agricultural economist for a very long time. And he has over 20 years of experience specializing in the agricultural market and trade policy modeling analysis. And he has been a founding member of BFAP in 2004 and has been managing director since. And he's really got passion for this. And I think if I look at your profile, you must be very friends with the Wandile Sihlobo. Although he's more of a TV star. But yeah, you're welcome. Come and give us an assessment of SACTA and give us a historical perspective and even share with us where you see things going forward.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen and friends. Always good to be here and to talk at this event. Thanks very much also for the kind introduction. And I'll get right into it. And Andre also, excellent presentation. So nice to build on it. Because now I can either do it a one-slide answer to what we're supposed to talk about, or I can put it a little bit into context of where this all fits in. But you'll see it builds quite nicely onto what Andre and the traders, what they are doing in that space. Okay, so this is, and if we can see those slides coming in, I can see it here on my screen. There we go. That's small. But anyway, let's get the highlight out of this, or all of this. So in short, colleagues, South Africa has been amongst the fastest rates of agriculture yield improvements in the world. So if we just look at that screen, and what we're doing here, we are comparing it's maize, wheat, soybeans, and sunflower. And what we've done is done the bars on the left-hand side. It just gives you the absolute level of yields, okay? And those are average yields from 2018 to 2023. So if I just would give you let's look at soybeans. There you can see South Africa's this bright orange color. And our average yield over the last 5 seasons, just over 2 tons per hectare, 2.07. Argentina, Brazil, and the US have higher yields in absolute terms. But that little diamond there gives you the growth rate, annual average growth rate over the last 10 years. In other words, taking from 2014 to 2023. So I realize, Andrew, this is like, when did SACTA start? Started at about, we had the collection of levies and soybeans 2019. So there is already this ramp up of yields before SACTA levies were initiated, and I'll get to that in a moment. We can talk about that. But in short, this is the good message is look at those growth rates. Colleagues, that's extremely fast. It's about 4% on average per annum growth rate, compared to the main exporting, our competitors that Andre was just showing now, the shipping rates. Those are the big exporters, so we are literally a drop in the bucket compared to their volumes that they're exporting. But still, if we want to compete, if we want to be competitive, those are the ones that we need to look at. And at 4% average annual growth rate, we have actually caught up to their yields over the last 10 years, especially in the last 5 years. So they're lying at around about 1.5 to 2%. So if you talk to seed breeders, and there are more knowledgeable people in this audience, you normally target about 2%, isn't it, Gert? That was normally kind of the norm that breeders would look at 2% on average over the long run. In South Africa, we've done a lot more than that, and I'll get back to some of those reasons for that. Looking at wheat then, because wheat's also an important crop in this mix at SACTA, it's the average yields, and they are a little bit, we need to interpret them carefully. There, the yields are actually looking quite favorable compared to Argentina or Russia or Australia, some of those big exporting wheat countries. But there's a bit of an irrigation in there. So at a national average, we're not comparing apples with apples because they are mainly dryland. But still, if we look at the growth rate and yields, at the 10-year average, we are basically just above Russia and Argentina, not as fast as Australia in terms of the rate of improvements. But I've put a little star in there. Look at the last 5 years. So over the last 5 years, average yields in wheat have also increased rapidly. And what I did there, I took specifically the Western Cape dryland area. So we have seen rapid increases in yields, but also we have to acknowledge it's been very good, been favorable rainfall seasons, good years. Farmers have done their part also in terms of farming practices, but let's give due to new varieties, new cultivars coming in, and pushing up those average yields that we want. Interesting, just to also note, South Africa now on average has a higher yield than Argentina and Brazil on maize. Not there where the US is. They're about 10 tons per hectare. We are just about 6 tons per hectare on average over the last 5 years. But look at those nice growth rates, also at about 5%. So all in all, average growth rates have been phenomenal over the last, let's say, 5 years especially, and even if you look at 10 years, because we have a drought in there, we had the 15-16 drought in there. I didn't take 2024 into consideration, so it's 2023. 2019 was also not that great, so we had a bit of a lower rainfall year in there. But I think in essence we can say we are on par if it comes to productivity growth, and even starting to catch up a little bit. The big questions, are these improvements driven by better genetics and seed technology, or are they driven by better farming practices? And my conclusion would be both. Okay, so I think it's a question of for these things to work together. So you need the better technology and you need the better farming practices. And it's difficult, and I'll show you a graph in a moment, where I've tried to kind of say, is there some indication that we can split it out? I think it's too, our seasons are too varying, our conditions are too varying. I think we need both. So, and that's that speaks to this point. South African producers are amongst the fastest technology adopters in the world. And this is not something that BFAP says. This is was actually stated by collaborators at University of Illinois. We are participating with them and with Grain SA and Protein Research Foundation and others, ARC, on this, on a project that we call Data Intensive Farm Management, where we do with high technology, high volumes of data, looking at if we can, what are the optimal seed density, what's the optimal fertilization volumes per hectare. And those Americans that came out, they were visiting our farmers, and they said that in their 10 years that they've worked in this program with high technology farmers, they haven't seen such a thing. And they work with the US, Argentina, Brazil, and in Europe. So our South African farmers are extremely fast technology adopters, which is a good thing. But they're also critical. They are very careful in what they select and what they don't do. And that's a good thing. It is, they carefully look, does it make sense? There's no safety net. There's no money to throw around. does this technology make sense or doesn't it make sense? So I think that's the kind of this balance between our cultivars and our technology on the seed side, but also farming practices that play a role. So what we've done here on this graph is we've taken the cultivar trials, the highest performing cultivar, over the last 10 years or 13 years. So, and there's obviously that's this blue bar. So you can see there's an increasing yield, a trend in those. And if you look at those increases, in other words, those are the national cultivar trials. And if we would just plot out the top performer over the last 10 years, growth is at about 1.7%. So we do see improvements in cultivars. Let's say that would be the ideal situation where you plant it in a small plot. These plots are irrigated or kind of supplementary irrigation, but they are also exposed to heat. So if there's an extreme heat that would come, these cultivars probably in a net house could do better. So let's call these national cultivar trial results under the conditions as planted. And then the green bar gives us the national average soybean yield. And there you can see my conclusion that I'm drawing from this graph is South Africa, especially over the last 5 years. You can see that little line that runs there, that blue line. That is the gap between what I call cultivar potential and actual yield. So potential yield and actual yield. Colleagues, and that's at the end of the day what we need to focus on. So yes, the one is the pull, is we want better cultivars all of the time, and then we want to pull up these, or we can pull potential up, but then there's the push, and those are the farmers. Those are the ones that come with better farming practices and actually getting closer to what these cultivars really can deliver. So my conclusion would be, I think at least over the last 5 years, we have closed the gap between potential and actual. That's my one conclusion. My second conclusion is cultivar potential is improving. And I think 2023 has been a good year. I think there are a lot of new cultivars. If we look at the number of cultivars that are now being registered and just hearing early results out of those new cultivars, I think we're going to see a nice little step change in the next 2 years or 3 years coming. But in short, I would also say we see positive signs in the space of cultivar development. So those are the kind of these two things. It's the farmer technology, how do you apply it, and then your cultivars. And together, we actually get these good yields. So the story on seed varieties since the start of SACTA, just a brief summary for those of you who don't know. And I don't know all the history. There are people in this room who know the SACTA history much better than I do. So I had to stand on their shoulders and hear what they wrote. But essentially, SACTA started collecting wheat and barley leavers in 2016. And then oats was added in 2018, and then soybeans 2019. So lupins also, they were approved in 2021, still very small sector, and I don't have good data on lupins. So we'll see what happens in that space. Corne, we can maybe work on some data in that space. But in essence, let's just look at 2018 if we look at the scoreboard. And you can also look at these bars. Look at the soybeans, the number of cultivars that came in recently. Huge number of cultivars that came in. So we're looking at those new varieties, and 81 new soybean varieties, 53 wheat, 2 new barley, 5 oats, and 1 lupin cultivar. So that gives you a bit of an overview of the number of seed varieties. I think it's if we look a little bit at a timeline, it's fair to say that we've certainly seen a step change in the release of soybean seed varieties in the past 2 seasons, and you can clearly see that. So I've drawn a line where SACTA levy was introduced, and you've already seen this bump up. Can you see when South Africa really started growing soybean hectares? In 2010, we attracted more interest by seed companies, and then just look at this little bump or a nice jump in 2021, 2022. So a lot of new varieties now in the last 2 years. That's why I say I think there are bigger things coming. And then on the right-hand side, just to remind ourselves, it's a GM country. Andre talked about the GM events, the synchronization of those events, how important that is. and it comes back to some of the focus areas that we have also in the master plan, is the registration, the registrar's office, capacity in the office, that can go faster. It cuts to all ends. It cuts to the trader side, it cuts to the seed breeder side, and it really influences our performance. And, harbors are expensive to fix, but the registrar's capacity and Act 36 and all of those good things, those are not expensive things to fix. We just need to get it done. Okay, and on the wheat side, again, a rate of release of new wheat varieties has improved. So I've just kind of drawn lines before SACTA levy was introduced. Maybe I should have kind of done the next little step there just before the dotted line. But certainly you can see where the dotted line is, where the SACTA levy was introduced. There seems to be a rate of increase, obviously, in the number of varietal releases that we're seeing. So it is working in the sense that we want to see more. We want to see more options. They need to perform also. Obviously, that's an important part of it. And we have seen much higher yields. As I've mentioned, the last 5 years in wheat, 5% average annual increase in yield. And that's decent. Again, part of it, farming practices, good climate. Part of it is variety. So why do we need to keep investing in higher yields? And I'll just wrap up and bring some of these into perspective. This is the long-term story. The declining trend in long-term real global commodity prices requires South Africa to stay on a productivity curve. So this graph runs from 1960, and these are in real terms, these are soybean and wheat prices. I just put it on an index that you can run, that you can compare them in an index. But colleagues, this just gives you a feel for why we as farmers and the total industry, where we always have to remain, if we want to be in the world market, if we want to grow, you need to be on that productivity curve. Why? Because in real terms, prices are always coming down. So how can you stay in business? You need to be more cost competitive on ton that you've produced. Okay, and the most striking part, apart from this declining trend, and there you can see the forecast up to 2030 or 2023. That's coming from our colleagues in the US, from FAPRI. They are projecting that we've now seen prices come down 30% lower than a year ago. And Andre, you've already done that export parity comparison. So we're going to have a tough time to compete. Even at export parity, if we have a good crop, prices are extremely low. So how are we going to compete with that? We need good yields, we need good productivity rates at farm level. But there you can see, just in relative term, that bump, these great prices that we just had over 2 years, in real terms, they are slightly lower than the bump that we had in 2007 with the biofuel and the 2009 with the crisis. And there's a 2013 drought in the US. So you can all stack them up, but essentially, in real terms, that's what you have to compete with. In soybeans, so not replicating or duplicating what Andre already mentioned. I mean, it's been a great success story. Look at the left-hand side. The growth that we've seen over the last 10 years in soybeans has been phenomenal, growing from, let's say, 300,000 tons to an amazing crop of 2.7 million tons. That's right there where the shaded area starts. And then on the right-hand side, what we've done there, and this is in collaboration with colleagues from PRF, we're keeping a careful eye on what's happening in the local market. And this is probably the most important, this is the key message now for seed breeding and for farmer soybean industry going forward. The soybean industry has been a major success, but the switch from import parity to export parity, effectively, it implies it's about a 30% drop in prices from import parity to export parity. So last year we managed it. We got 590,000 tons of soybeans exported, but the reality is prices are lower, much lower, and we need to compete at those prices. And if we look at on the right-hand side, that curve, the amount of, we've essentially, and this is actually maybe the next graph shows it better, that little blue line, can you see it moving and increasing much faster than the green line? The green line is total soya oil cake usage in South Africa. So can you see what South Africa has done? We've essentially caught up. We've basically done a lot of import replacement, and now we've basically caught up with the local market. And that was the easy phase. We call that in BFAP phase 1. Phase 2 is being competitive at export parity levels, and that's what we're aiming for, that's what we need to work for, and that's why these cultivar developments, improvements are so important, because that's going to be the game. In our view, our forecast, we say growth beyond the local market will have to come from exports. And that's why also these marginal increases, Andre, like on your transportation cost, your rail, your ports, everything has to work together for this industry to achieve that goal. If we talk about wheat, South Africa remains a net importer of wheat. But we can see in the recent years that additional growth and demand has basically been covered by rising local production. So we have seen production increasing in the wheat industry, and that's due to higher yields and slightly expansion in area. So we have seen, especially in the Western Cape, which initially we actually saw some area coming down. The wheat farmers, Andries is taking out his wife's garden for some more wheat hectares. So we have seen more hectares growing there, a little bit, about 30,000 hectares more. But in essence, if you eyeball those blue and green bars, imports are around about 1.8 million, and production is keeping up now with that additional demand. Just to wrap up then, as we're getting to the end, Marnus's graph, I think there are few people that can have a 100-year graph. So we love 100-year graphs. On the right-hand side, colleagues, that is a 100-year graph of area planted of wheat in South Africa. South Africa wheat area and yield. So if you eyeball that, 1917, there were just under 500,000 hectares of wheat planted. And the wheat area peaked in about the late 70s. Now, I won't ask who in this room was responsible for that, but we did peak at about 2 million hectares of wheat in the late 70s, and it's come all the way down. So we're around about 540,000 hectares now. But look, again, those yields have increased. We are simply not competitive at export parity in wheat. We have areas where we can grow competitively, make a difference on imports, but certainly not at export parity. You can go and do those calculations. But again, that success story, look at that ramp up of soybean hectares. It's been basically no crop in the 70s, and now we have a decent sized crop of soybeans. That's it from my side, and I look forward to any questions. Thanks very much.
All right, thanks, Ferdy. I forgot to mention earlier that actually you are a professor.
That doesn't matter. I'm a farmer.
Now I realize with all of this analysis that actually this guy is more than what I said. Thank you for that insightful presentation. And I've heard this from the Peru for a food and agriculture policy. Yeah, it's time to ask questions. Maybe I should fire first while you compose your question. You said earlier, you actually asked a rhetorical question about whether the improved yields are as a consequence of better farming practices or better genetics. And then you said it's a bit of both. I thought you didn't want to credit SACTA.
I did, didn't I?
Because
I said both.
You said it's a bit of both. I think we are not sure. But
no, the reality is, I'll invite you to a farm. It's difficult to make that split. But I think the combo is important.
You made a compelling case, though, that since the levies started, there's been an improvement in the yields.
Correct.
So I thought, look, Dion should be sort of smiling somewhere. All right, let's have the questions on the floor. Yes, my brother, please.
Thank you, Prof. It's Aaron again, and thank you for this informative presentation as well. I thought maybe I shouldn't let you go, given the analytical guru you are, and sitting now next to SACTA, which seems to again be playing such a significant role. And like many others that are here, if you look at the trusts and the role that they're playing, but because I'm participating more on the developing agriculture part, my question is phrased around that. Well, it's not actually really a question, it's a comment that, given the role that SACTA and others are playing, especially the trusts and the level of information and data that they have, we actually struggle in the development space around getting accurate data. when you look at yield and farmer performance, you look at productivity, and you want to measure that against what you say is the potential yields that the farmers can get and the actual yields that they are getting. And because for us in the development space, we are trying to narrow that gap. And SACTA and the like present an opportunity, in my view, to actually get that accurate data, I mean, because of the role that they play in the space. So I'm just putting it out there that it's again maybe another source of information and data that can help the industry around the role and the performance and productivity of new farmers. So it's just a comment.
No, Aaron, thanks very much. So you're speaking right to our heart and our space here. So Sandy will be talking about exactly that. So in BFAP, we've launched what we call a roadmap to inclusive agriculture transformation, and that's exactly what we want to do. We want to capture more information at the ground level of what's happening at transformation projects. We don't have good data. We need to get it. We need to get there. And these are green shoots. We're working with SACTA. We're working with OAC. And many other of the industries where we're starting to compile the data and understanding and starting to map progress, because it's important. We want to close the gap. That's a 1.6, so it's data. We need to have better information that we can start to measure, that we understand the impact. Secondly, we can see progress. And thirdly, I see the spillover effects. So colleagues, we're doing a lot of work also in Africa on value chains. And I see South Africa has a huge opportunity to literally leapfrog our emerging, our new entrant farmers to commercial yields. Where in Africa and an organization like SACTA can play a big role in this leapfrog of technology, of information, of extension services. And you guys are also in that space right there. We can actually leapfrog yields. They don't have to be that low. They can be really at the commercialized levels that we need it. And if you just look at the markets, we need commercialized levels of yields for farmers to be profitable. That's the reality. Scale, we can debate around scale, but the reality is just whatever scale you have, you just need to get those commercialized yields going. So that's a great comment. Thanks for that.
Excellent, and thanks for your commitment to improve the data collection and analysis. And hopefully in the next session of this kind, we will have more data and analysis. All right, I've got two last questions. Yeah, you wanted to ask? All right, okay. All right. I like the idea of leapfrogging, but I would rather have springballing. Springbok, leap
springboking, okay.
Thank you, Ferdi. Wessel Lemmer from Aquasgrain. I'm very interested, maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about that potential yield and the national cultivar trials yield. We say there's a great potential for still improvement, but we accept it as kind of a norm. I would like to know, we saw the numbers on a national level. Are there certain areas, say for instance for soybeans, that we see that gap narrow much more than the national average? Is the national cultivar yields, that trials, are they representative of the national crop? Maybe not. And in those specific areas where that national cultivar yields are, how does that compare to the actual yields in that area? Because there must be a reason, say on dry land in the same area, why we can't narrow that gap more. And then we would like to store that crop. Thanks.
No, it's always good to have storage in the room, Wessel. I think there's a lot more nice work that we can do. It was the interest of time. I was capped on time here, but Erod has also worked with me on that graph. So Erod, I mean, there's a lot of nice stuff that we can do on it. So that was literally an average of the cool, moderate, and warm areas, top performers. So we made it very, very rough national averages of the cultivars, but there are trials on all these different sites. And if you make it a very easy comparison, Wessel, it's cool, moderate, warm, literally east, central, west of those results. But we can all unpack it, and there are areas where we're actually closing out. I mean, last year, the Northwest was right on target of what they could potentially reach, because it was a wonderful year in the Northwest. But this year they are far below what the potential is because of the tough year. The East is, so you can probably, if you want to do it really technical, you can look which one has a CV. You can work out a coefficient of variation, or which one hits the potential more frequently, and where are the more risky areas. But we all know the answer. It's in the West, it's more risky. It's more around, and I think if we can, and those are, I think, also in the technology side, if we can get more drought resistance going, shorter varieties, longer varieties, to play around with it, I think that's part of a key success for adaptation of climate, of these climate extremes, if you can play around with it. So I think the new cultivars, in terms of the length of grow that they give, you'll be far more flexible to absorb climate. So you would probably plant a package, let's say 2 or 3 cultivars, one with a longer one, one medium, one slow, or short, medium, long growth to mitigate climate impacts.
Well, thank you, Ferry. I think you have answered comprehensively. We wanted to wrap up this session.
Tobias has one more question.
Yeah, I'll be very generous, but this is extraordinarily generous.
We will give you some extra soybeans after the meeting. Ferdy, a quick question. Having done this analysis, and it's a lovely one, thank you very much, and it's also encouraging to us to see the return on investment, but you might see that we are rapidly heading to R1 billion worth of money invested in cultivars. Having done this analysis, what are your thoughts on how do we assess the return on investment? What other factors do we need to start monitoring and making sure that we really perform on the cultivars and the genetic improvement?
Oh, that's a good question.
Brief answer to the good question.
Brief answer to good questions. Tobias, I think probably doing more work on the yield gap stuff. I think that could give us the best lead indicator of return on investment over time. And then the second one's benchmarking. Looking at the countries, who's doing what, and then careful assessment of these cultivar performances. I think that's in short. So more benchmarking on cultivars, and then a careful track of the yield gap. The Australians do a great job on the yield gap stuff.
All right. Beatrix, please come forward and present some gift to our speaker for the lovely talk, and take a nice picture. Oh, you know the criteria. Yes. There you go. Thank you so much. Lovely. We ran out of time. I was about to ask you, how much of South Africa's soya content does the Japanese soy sauce contain? That's a fun fact to find out for the next information session. All right, we move on to the next speaker. The next session, the next topic, we're going to be looking at SACTA's transformation platform. And our colleague Sandy Jackson, who's head of the Agri-Socio-Economics Department or Division at the Bureau for Food and Agriculture Policy, basically working with Ferry, but heading a different unit, will be coming forward to give us a perspective on SACTA's transformation platform. This is a very important topic. Our participant there raised the point earlier about the importance of bringing development issues into the mainstream and getting some of the developing guys into the commercial space. Sandy has been in this sector for over 20 years of corporate experience across various disciplines and in technical and operational management and procurement, supply chains. And yeah, I don't want to read your long biography, otherwise it's very it's too in-depth. But yeah, you are well versed to discuss this issue, given your position where you are, and we look forward to hearing from you and engaging with you further.
morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk today. And I'm really standing up here as one of the many people that have put a lot of effort and hours into the transformation platform that we're going to talk about and present today. So I think maybe just starting off, where's the slide? Sorry. At BFAP, we really do believe that data-driven reporting and informed decision-making is absolutely critical for achieving our inclusive transformational growth targets as a country. And I think, Aaron, your question earlier around, how do we start to measure and manage transformational programs is critically important in our attempts to really understand where we are from a growth perspective in the country, both from a commercial growth as well as from a space that creates for transformational growth. And it really is in the context of the ANMP and our inclusive transformational growth targets that BFAP has put in a significant amount of kind of time and effort working with the industry, working with industry bodies, working with industry players to really start to unpack what do we need to do in order to be able to report on our transformational growth. And if we really take a bit of a step back and we look at data and the data challenges that I think we faced as a country for many years in terms of reporting on our true impact from an agricultural perspective, but also our performance and also our challenges around transformation, we see that yes, there is data. There's a lot of data, and people always talk about data and the fact that we have data. But when we try and look at how do we aggregate that data, how do we report on that data, how do we structure that data, we realize that the data is really fragmented, and it's really difficult to pull it all together to get a kind of transparent, accurate, what we call evidence-based view on where we are from a performance and a transformation perspective. And with kind of data challenges, we get huge or with the current data kind of structures, there's lots of challenges around standardization of data, around definitions of what we're trying to kind of report on. We find a lot of issues of once-off reporting. So we did this year, but what does it actually mean in terms of where did we start and where are we going? And what is the time series reality of our transformational programs or of our sector in general? We also see a huge amount of overcounting or double counting and the kind of required definitions around various different programs, various different funding structures supporting the same grower or different growers for the same crop or different crops. It's actually really difficult to be able to answer some of those detailed questions. And as we get into a little bit more of the detail of the presentation and the work that we're doing specifically with SACTA, we'll call out a few of the realities of what that challenges really mean when we're trying to measure performance, and also when we're trying to make the right decisions in terms of how we move our transformational programs kind of forward. And also really talking about evaluating impact. So Aaron, you had a great question that kind of segued so nicely into this around how do we actually measure impact and how do we start to understand the opportunities to move a lot of our transformational programs from current levels of yield and productivity to significantly better yield. And impact isn't just how many hectares did I plant. Impact isn't just what is the yield that we've achieved. Impact is way more than that, and we need, I think, from a country perspective to really understand that and to be able to monitor and measure it. So why this huge focus on monitoring and evaluation? Well, there are lots of quotes around data and measurement, but I mean, really, what you measure affects what you do. And if we don't measure the right things, we're not going to be doing the right things. And we really do need to do the right things to achieve the transformational impact that we are kind of driving to from a sector perspective. And it's critically important to really define the right metrics that are required. it's really important to understand the grower database that we're working with, both in terms of assessing the needs, which often influence the type of funding that is made available to the growers. And again, it'll come through in some of the discussions later in the presentation, but around giving farmers funding is critically important. But what is the structure of that funding? And does that funding actually enhance the grower and put him in a better position at the end of the day? Or does it actually increase his financial kind of risk? If you're not achieving the right yields and the right productivity, if you don't have access to markets, it really is important that we understand the needs of the growers. And also defining the grower database starts to address the comments and the concerns around over and under kind of reporting from an impact perspective. It also is becoming increasingly important to have a little bit more of a whole farm approach. And by establishing a grower database and by investing in kind of monitoring and evaluation, we start to understand more about the farm level approach and understanding the whole need of a grower and not necessarily just funding for one aspect. So if you just very quickly, a number of people around this room, I think, have had conversations with BFAP and certainly with myself and Leander and Fadi over many years around monitoring and evaluation systems and around inclusive agricultural transformation. And since around about 2014, BFAP has been investing in an integrated information system that really helps to structure data, structure the processes around data, and enables us to start to really run integrated analysis across different transformational kind of projects with service providers that we are working with. And what we've definitely learned is that it's not a straight line. And the requirement for informed decision-making is changing, and it will continue to intensify. And the way that we've done monitoring and evaluation in the past is actually not good enough for what we need to do into the future to really be able to credibly report on what our transformation situation and performance is from a country perspective. In order to do that, we need to define the right KPIs, we need to understand the right data requirements, and we need to have accountabilities in place to ensure data gathering and data access at a farm level. And we need to, I think, and Andrew and Sandele and the team have spent a lot of time debating this reality around data gathering, data standardization, and data verification actually takes a significant amount of time. But if you put the basics in place and you get the structures right, over time, it adds significant efficiency in terms of being able to report accurately on our performance. So if we really just take a bit of a schematic, and we'll go into a little bit more detail of the specifics of the SACTA work in a few slides' time. But if you really look at what we're trying to achieve from our kind of integrated systems approach, is starting very much with geospatial contextualization and the representation of our growers. So who do we support and where are they? And what do we know from a grower database perspective about the growers that we are supporting across the different programs? And we really start to try and gather information broadly around kind of demographics, around dependence, around land ownership, and sometimes asking those questions, gathering that information, raises some concerns around kind of data confidentiality and POPI Acts and all of those kind of things. But it is critically important that we start to really understand who are the growers, where are they located, what are some of the demographics associated with those growers, because we're being asked to report on more and more of those kind of metrics when we start talking about impact and going beyond just the how many hectares have we kind of supported and what funding did we provide. We then look at very much customized and integrated M&E, so working in the specific sector, given the commodity that we're supporting, what is the key data that we require. And yes, there's a lot of commonalities in terms of data and data structures, but there also are very specific and unique nuances around different programs that we work to kind of incorporate into the monitoring and evaluation kind of frameworks and structures and templates that we develop, which we then integrate into a database where we can start really working on interactive dashboards and reporting and calling out the key metrics that we want to report on from a reporting perspective. And I think, Aaron, this is also to your question around kind of benchmarking and how do we start to evaluate where we are from a transformational perspective to where we want to be from a transformational perspective. Having this integrated database also enables us to do benchmarking and integrate other sources of data that allows us to look at what were the impacts of weather, or what is the infrastructure kind of challenges associated with the specific programs or initiatives that we're working with. So having this platform allows both the very detailed kind of client-specific information, but also the opportunity to integrate it with a lot of BFAP's kind of models and data kind of networks that can provide additional insights into some of the performance, either the good performance or actually the challenges that some of these producers are facing. So if we look at the SACTA transformational overview, and I need to apologize before I put up the next slide because I'm stealing Andrew's slide because I thought he was presenting before me. So you'll see this again later, but Andrew puts in an overview of kind of SACTA's impact and the kind of enterprise development spend and the hectares supported and the growers kind of funded through the transformational program for the 2021 to 2023 season. And we're going to unpack that in a little bit more detail in terms of the data that we've gathered and the work that we've done with SACTA up to date. And I think if we look at kind of an overall observation from the SACTA's transformational program, great efforts have been made, and I think that's within SACTA and the sector, but the reality is there's a lot we still need to do. And that the kind of generally the industry remains a little bit uncoordinated in terms of its transformational programs, and the opportunity to bring that together and to standardize on our reporting structures and our reporting platforms and programs will enable us to have a much more holistic view to where we are relative to the targets that we've set ourselves and where we want to be. So from a actual output of the platform that we're working with SACTA to develop, as we said at the start, we really focus on getting a geospatial contextualization. So where are the growers that we are kind of supporting from a province perspective? What are the number of growers and what is the area planted? Now, before I go into the detail, you'll immediately notice that there's a slight difference in the numbers reported here versus the numbers reported in Andrew's presentation, and there are a number of reasons for that. But the most important right now is this is the start of a journey. And Aaron will know, and a lot of the service providers will know, that in the last 8 months, I guess, we've been working with the service providers to get the right information from the 2023 season and collate it and aggregate it and verify it and check it. And you'll see at the end of the presentation, we're not saying that this data is 100% correct. We're saying we're at the start of a really exciting journey in terms of gathering the data, verifying the data, and getting to a point where we can really stand up here with a huge amount of confidence showing the impact of our transformational program. One of the contributing factors to the 90 on my slide versus the 119, I think it is, on Andrew's slide, is that whole comment at the start around double counting or over counting. So if you go through all the kind of underlying data structures, you know, there's a grower that might be growing 4 different crops there's a grower that might be getting various different funding structures. Is that counted as one unique grower, or is that actually counted as a number of different growers because they're growing different crops? And that's kind of the challenge and the realities of trying to unpack this data and getting to kind of really distinct counts for growers rather than a broad kind of brush count, and you're counting the same grower who grows barley and wheat as two growers, but he's actually one grower with two crops. And from an area planted perspective, I think Andrew's number, and you'll see it later in our slide, is closer to the planned hectares, where we look at this whole combination of what was planned, what was planted, and ultimately what's being harvested from a crop perspective. So again, not going into the absolute specifics of the numbers, but by developing this grower database, we can start to present various different statistics around the growers and the individuals that we are supporting. So what are the number of growers per crop? And as I said, if you count all of those up, you get to more than 90, because there are growers within this grower database that are planting more than one crop. We can start looking at gender, we can start looking at age distribution. There's a load of different metrics that we can start to kind of really accurately report on, knowing that it is linked to a specific kind of grower from a unique count perspective. If we then unpack it a little bit further in terms of summer crop and winter crop, we start looking at what is the area planted per crop, and what is the SACTA loan that is...
Those numbers are in fine print. Can you read the two a bit?
Sure. So the total area planted is 6,042 hectares across both the summer crop and the winter crop. And if we kind of then look at, what is the annual or the actual loan that has been supplied to the growers for that crop, we're looking at just over 65 million rand being funded to the growers from an input perspective. And that supports, as we said earlier, around about 7,000 planned hectares, but actually 6,042 planted hectares. And then we are looking at, on the hectares that have been planted, how much has actually been harvested. And currently, from a data perspective, we're looking at 7,144 tons having been harvested across the summer and the winter crop for what we've got in this platform as season 23, which is actually, and we'll go into a bit of this later as well, is actually the summer crop that's planted in 22 and harvested in 23, and the winter crop that is both planted and harvested in 23. So there's lots of discussion and debate, and again, you'll see it in Andrew's slide later. What is a planting window? What is the harvesting window? What is the financing window? All of that, is part of the conversations that we're unpacking in order to get this kind of really consistent and aligned view. So when we stand up and we report it, we know exactly what we're talking about. We also then can look at what is the kind of distribution in terms of the allocation of funds per crop type. Obviously, that information can get disaggregated in various different ways in terms of crop type and hectares and all the rest of it. So it allows us the opportunity to analyze the data in a whole lot of different ways. And again, apologies if it's a little bit small, but this shows some of the differences around what was our planned hectares, which was 7,158 hectares, versus the planted hectares of 6,042. And the difference between that, and then how much have we actually harvested to date in terms of tons. And understanding your planned and your planted is critically important. From a budgeting perspective, Andrew and Sindele get kind of budgets from service providers saying this is the number of hectares that we want to plant, and there's obviously budgets allocated to that and funds distributed, and for very good reasons, we don't always plant those hectares, right? But what does that mean from a funding perspective? And how is the kind of delta accounted for? Obviously, there's a lot of preparation that goes into hectares, even if it's not ultimately planted. So it's not to say if it wasn't planted, the funds should necessarily still be available, but we can start to really unpack a lot of those questions and be able to answer a lot of those questions when we're challenged around how are funds utilised, and what is the impact or the efficiencies of the funds that have been spent? What are we achieving as an outcome of the funds that have been supplied and the work that the service providers have put in? If we then look beneath the big table, we start to look a little bit about the yield. So where are we sitting from a yield perspective? And again, links very much into kind of Aaron's question around how do we benchmark our transformational programs versus the benchmark in the region where these growers are situated. And we can see at the moment that with the data that we currently have, we're sitting at round about 7,150 tonnes having been harvested, but not all the hectares are being reported as harvested yet. So we've only really seen about 3,300 hectares having harvested information, and therefore the yields are sitting at around 2.6 on average for this season. Now, from a harvested information perspective, the questions now come up is the data, or has the data not yet been provided, but it actually has been harvested? Great, we can update it, and as we go, we get updated information. Or was it planted, but no yield or no offtake has actually been achieved for various reasons? And both of those are important bits of information to have in terms of understanding the challenges that are kind of driving yield performance or the challenges that are encountered by the growers. So in SACTA's position, yes, it's a kind of soft loan, but it is still a loan, so there's an accountability to pay the loan back. So if you've got no yield, how do you pay that loan back? So it's not necessarily about kind of policing, it's about getting the right insights. So when we look at this information, kind of we understand what's actually happening on the ground, what it means from a grower perspective, and how does SACTA take that information from 2023 to start making the right decisions for 2024. So I think as we unpack the data and as we analyze the data, we're in a position where we can ask good questions and get good answers. But I think, I've spoken quite specifically on some of the numbers, but it really does come with an overriding caveat that we're not saying that this is the absolute number right now. This is the start of a journey. And we do know that there is still kind of data missing from our data sources that we're getting, and we're working literally on a kind of ongoing basis with service providers, with Sandile, with Andrew, to get the complete set of data for 2023, or for the production year of 2023, and to then kind of move on to what do we do next and how do we continue with this program from a monitoring perspective. I think, I've spoken about quite a lot of these concepts going through the presentation, but really, data and data reporting is a challenge, but it is critical in order for us to really make the right decisions from a transformational perspective. And, we want to be able to identify why are hectares increasing or decreasing? Are farmer numbers increasing or decreasing? Have we got the same amount of farmers, but with more hectares? To Fadi's earlier point, like, are we looking at kind of scale from a number of farmers? Are we looking at scale from a number of hectares? Are we looking at kind of commercialization in terms of how do we get that balance right? So how do we make sure that growers that have the ability to expand and have the land to expand can actually expand in the right way? But how do we equally not put ourselves in a position where there's rapid expansion when actually the kind of the production practices kind of at farm level aren't at a level that are required in order to manage that scale? So using the data and the data structures in order to really provide us with insights to make the right decisions going forward. And I think, if we look at transformation in South Africa, there has been a strong dependence on grant funding for a very long time. But I think the conversation has really moved from, use grant funding when grant funding is appropriate, but actually we're moving into this blended finance, into soft loans, ultimately into commercial loans. But in order to make that transition from a farmer perspective, we really do actually have to understand what are the yields, what are the returns, and what is the ability for these growers to pay back the loans. Otherwise, as Sandile always says, we're actually indebting growers rather than having a positive kind of transformational impact. So yes, there is increased focus on, what are the returns, what is the loan position, how do we manage that? But it is because it is so important with this move into a loan type funding as opposed to a grant type funding where there isn't the financial obligation to pay back the money. So yeah, lots more questions that we're kind of debating and asking around the questions in terms of, are growers staying in the program for an extended period of time? How do we successfully advance growers out of kind of soft loans or out of kind of transformational programs into alternative kind of funding programs? How do we make sure that their kind of platform is right in order to step forward? And then just a very little bit around kind of some next steps. As we mentioned, it's very much about data completeness for 2023, and we'll continue to engage with the service providers on the data. And then just, we spoke a little bit around, how do we get alignment on different crop years, funding years, marketing years. There is some work that we still need to do to make sure that when we present on these numbers, there's absolute kind of consistency and standardization on what we're reporting on. There's a lot of work currently on the go around what we call the top-down versus the bottom-up. So how do we look at, from a SACTA perspective, there are obviously very clear records about what's been funded to who, for how many hectares and all the rest of it. And now we're gathering a whole lot of information from the service providers to say, what have I received, kind of what have I paid out, and what is my impact? We need to make sure that those marry at the end of the day from a systems and a reporting perspective. And then a huge focus going forward on time series analysis. So I started by saying, often M&E is a kind of a once-off type evaluation, and we say, in this year we planted that many hectares and we achieved this amount of yield. Yes, that is important information, but actually what we want to be able to say is, over the last 5 years, this is the trend in our yield by crop. This is the improvement in yields that our farmer programs are achieving, and this is why, and this is the impact and the benefit that our program has actually had from a transformational perspective, and also the opportunity to create what we call a bit of a multi-platform reporting program. So we're standing here today at the SACTA Transformation kind of workshop presenting on your programs, but we're also doing work with the OAC. Many of the service providers that are sitting around the room do work for both kind of SACTA and a loan perspective, as well as OAC from a grant perspective. When we start reporting on those two different programs, if it's one grower across two programs, how do we report on it? Does SACTA say they've got 90 growers? OAC say they have 40 growers. How many of those are the same growers versus how many of them are actually kind of distinct, unique growers? And how do we show the multiple funding, and in some cases the benefits of that, but in other cases the risks of that? So how do we understand, we give grant funding for a good reason, and that can and does supplement SACTA's position and probably protect SACTA's loan. But in other cases, where SACTA's funding growers and other funders are funding the same growers for the same crop, that creates a huge risk from a financial perspective. And it also actually doesn't drive true transformation. So it's really around starting to unpack those questions and make the right informed decisions going forward. That's it.
Thank you very much, Sandy, for your insightful presentation. It's very clear that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but at least you have started and you are getting somewhere, and
We've started.
that's awesome. So let's have a round of questions. You want to ask a question? All right, Andrew from SACTA, the CEO of SACTA. Yeah, come down, yeah, so you can get captured. Not state captured.
State captured. Yeah, I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't be doing all this, but it's not so much a question, rather just some comments. And just to say thank you so much for being prepared to take on this mammoth task. As we become more aware of what the transformation space looks like at SACTA, we realized how complex it is and there's no straightforward answers. So my comment is really just to say thank you very much to BFAP for taking on this mammoth task. And we will learn a lot as we go along. Yeah, again, thank you so much. I would encourage other commodity trusts that are involved in the transformation space to also try and do something of a similar nature so we can get a better picture of the transformation space. And this is a really critical space in South Africa. I always say this, in 30 years' time, we'll have a population of 120 million. We need to probably double or even more than double our food production. We need more farmers. It's very simple. Thank you very much, Sandy. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Any other comments or question? There was a question that came earlier. It was not meant for you. It was meant for the previous speaker, but because of network, it arrived very late. But I suspect you have answered it. It has to do with the BEE. Somebody said, do we have statistics on the number of wheat? I think wanted to talk about hectares. Wheat cultivated by qualifying BEE farming enterprises in South Africa versus commercial farmers. And this was from Noel Bastian from For Farmers Organization. I'm not sure whether that question you have any information, but I think it was meant for the previous speaker, but we got it late from online. Yeah, but I think it goes to the issue of evaluation, monitoring, and that you spoke about earlier, and which is a continuous issue. And I think one of the important things that that comes from Andrew's comment is that very few organizations are willing to be evaluated on what they are doing. I think the fact that SACTA is opening up its books and it's giving you information to make an assessment, analysis, and comment, and even project what the future might look like, it's very important for their own organizational improvement. I think that's a very critical point to make. Is there any other comment or two questions before we take a break? We've eaten a lot of time for our break. Yeah, I knew you were going to ask. I knew it. I was just waiting for you.
And I was trying to avoid it, but I can't. I think what I picked up already positive there, and comparing it with what Ferdi was actually presenting, when you look at the soya there, the long-term average of soya that Ferdi was presenting, I think it was about 2.07. And I think when I look at the average yield just under soya for 2023, I think it's about it's maybe a little bit slightly higher, 2.6, compared to what Ferdi was presenting. And I think, is that level of information that also do save us from the likes of Andrew and them as the funders, because I'm also hoping that this information, as it gets gathered and these measurements and measurable outcomes are put forward, that it's not only about measurement, but it's about also unlocking more support. Because I guess because of the nature of development and the lack of information, a lot of funders are scared and they look at it almost as a risky platform, and the perceived level of risk in most cases is just unjustifiably too high, just because there's no information. So one is hoping that this also provides an opportunity for more funding to be directed to development. I was quite glad to hear that one of the participant was talking about how difficult it is in the Northwest about sunflower, and that they were asking Dion and them to, produce some sort of miracle so that yields can go up. We are in the same boat, but often because of its development, there could be a perception that, in actual fact, that farmer did not perform, only to find out that in actual fact that was a weather or a climate-related aspect. So that is quite important for us as well. I mean, I just tried to do a quick analysis between the Free State farmers who were planting sunflower compared to the Northwest farmers. 3 times for the past 3 seasons, for example, you find that one farmer could not repay the loan 3 times. But another farmer in the Free State has managed to repay that loan 3 times. So what is the cost for that? So this information is quite helpful. Thanks.
And I think maybe, Aaron, just building on that from a data perspective, and we very specifically kept today's overview at a kind of provincial level. But when you actually go into kind of the dashboards and into the data, you can pull out a lot of those types of kind of analysis. So what is the yield per crop, per area? It's one of the reasons why we put so much focus on this kind of contextualization in terms of where is the grower, so you can benchmark, you can understand what are their yields compared to the program yields, but also compared to kind of a protocol or a kind of benchmark production in the area. And we can start to show the differences in productivity of the different crops across different provinces, across different years, across different whatever. So yes, exactly, we can start to give evidence behind some of that performance. And I think very much so if you start to looking for alternative funding, and you can show time series kind of performance of these growers, it also becomes a very different conversation in terms of unlocking additional kind of support into the future.
Yeah, related to that, someone asked online, what happens if a farmer cannot pay their loan? And does the farmer get extra loan to try and rectify the situation and be able to pay back the loan, or does he get left indebted and fend off for himself in seeing how to pay back the loan? I think this is about credit extension in difficult times. I'm not sure whether I don't think that's your question, but I'm sure we can deal with them later on when we assemble the panel, which will have different people. I think they can tackle some of these questions.
I think maybe not to answer that question, but to say those are the exact questions that Sandele, Andrew, the service providers, ourselves are having in terms of, what does it mean, and how do we make the right decision based on the information that we have. So, is the grower not able to pay back his loan because it was a drought season and there were real issues? Well, actually, they need, additional support to get out of that position. Is there an OAC kind of loan on crop insurance that can support, that has supported? There's lots of discussions that are being had around those exact questions. And having a platform, having the right information helps you to make an informed decision in that situation, rather than leaving a farmer either indebted or continuing to kind of fund a situation that is actually just ultimately putting the grower or the individual in financially a worse position. So good question, and that's part of the reason for the investment and the kind of conversations that we're having in terms of the way forward.
Yeah, thank you so much. My take would be that I think it would be interesting to see how best practices can be learned from one area of development where there's been successes and be applied in another area where there had been failings and perhaps poor performance. And I think seeing that type of assessment, I think, will be quite crucial going forward. Thank you so much, Sandy, for your input.
Thank you.
You have a bit of a goodie as well. All right. The ladies know how to do it when they're together. Thank you so much. Welcome back. I hope you guys got refreshed, got some coffee, and had a stretch a bit. And in line with our regulations, we spoke about earlier of being comfortable, secure, and alert and attentive. Welcome back. We're going to play a short video on some of the work that has been done on transformation. When we closed before the break, Sandy talked about the investment that SACTA is making on transformation projects and all of the development, and she mentioned also the postgraduate funding that people from previously disadvantaged communities get from SACTA. And we will show this video to demonstrate what actually happens. So this is one of those initiatives that SACTA has embarked upon. We know that in South Africa, most of the funding, or bulk of the funding, goes to undergraduate students from the side of government through the NSFAS funding. And most postgraduate students, even if they want to progress, they struggle to get funding. So this is an area in which SACTA is focused on, obviously focusing in the specific field of that is useful in the development of technologies, genetics, and all of that. So there's postgraduate bursaries, there's internships, and then there's students who have completed from TVET colleges that get in-service training and support and all of that to ensure that they participate in the industry value chain. Some are placed in a FABI, which is one of the specialized areas of training and postgraduate development at the University of Pretoria, focusing on forestry and other areas. And we will see that we will do the video in two parts, and this will be the first one. We'll play the other one later. Thank you so much.
My name is Namasonto Mahlaba. I am from KZN. I'm 28 years old. I did a Bachelor of Agriculture in Plant Science and a Master's degree in Agriculture, majoring in Horticultural Science. Both my degree, I obtained them at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in Pietermaritzburg. There was a post advertised by FABI looking for people who want to do the internship. So I took the opportunity and I applied.
There are various skill shortages in the sector, but I think one of the main shortages is in the domain of phytosanitation and biosecurity. And that's not unique to South Africa. It is also relevant to the rest of Africa. So we lack skilled people in this domain, and the aim of this internship is therefore to train and capacitate interns to conduct work and research in biosecurity and phytosanitation. With this, we hope that this will improve our accessibility of South African commodities to the rest of the world.
The process was very easy. They really just interested in knowing your interest in research and also willing to learn more. So I did apply and I got called for an interview, and the interview was successful. Then I relocated to Pretoria and we got here, and then we were notified that the internship is funded by SACTA, which are funding 6 people in the internship. So that's how I got to know SACTA and how they are connected to the internship.
SACTA involvement in the internship and bursary scheme, the drive behind us is because we want to promote diversity and inclusivity in the sector, but also we're trying to see how we can better nurture talent and also close the skill gap in the country, but make sure that whoever that has been introduced into the industry has been funded and is well funded. Students that we choose or we prioritize are students from previously disadvantaged universities And being introduced to organizations like FEBI, it helps because they have the necessary equipment, they have the necessary skill, and they have the necessary expertise. And also being in a new environment, that kind of improve their perseverance, and also it improve their skills and collaboration, of which is an important thing, I think, in the industry for this generation, more than it was before.
I come from a background where this is new to me, everything that is done in FABI. That's why I am very grateful for this opportunity. So at the beginning of the year, it was really just adapting and trying to learn a lot of things that are being done here. So we do a lot of field trips where we go and collect samples from different farms. So we collect maize, diseased samples actually. So we go to farmers that have contacted FABI, letting them know about a particular challenge that they are facing. So we would go to field trips and collect the samples, and then we process them in GRP, where we are diagnosing, because we also want to confirm, not just look at the symptoms and give from out of our own knowledge. We also want to confirm, doing DNA sequencing, give them proper information so they get to share their stories, and you become part of a solution and a movement that is working towards solving everyday's agricultural problem. Also, there's so much you can learn in FABI. They conduct events like International Plant Health, where you learn from people from different organizations, also the Department of Agriculture.
Because we're paying, this program is mainly on internship. What we do, we're paying for their living expenses, and it's more for on your wage or salary kind of type, where we send the money to their bank accounts, and our aim, and we try and meet the standard that they can be able to live throughout the month. But also we are very, it's a comprehensive kind of structure, because we also allow, if we are being approached, to assist in any other way where a student is facing other social issues or mental issues, maybe to say we can come in and assist and provide that fund in order to assist a student. We want a student to focus on learning, or we want an intern to focus on learning instead of worrying about all the daily expenses, transport and accommodation. We pay for that as well. Try to give that salary that will be able to cover those costs.
The internship is a start for me, because I just came from doing my master's degree with little to no experience besides working in the lab, doing the projects that I was working on. So this is just a foundation and a start of building a career that is going to contribute also to the agricultural sectors. I am very interested in research. I like how it really just challenged me. We have organizations that come together to work to share their challenges, and also future collaborations, which is something I learned from here in FABI, that the collaboration also they have with SACTA, getting interns to work here. It's such collaborations that really important, that are really needed for the younger generations, giving young people an opportunity to learn and to grow also. So as a researcher, I'm still trying to find my field of interest, but I've really just put myself in a space where I'm learning as much as I can, to be able to move around, be open to any learning experiences, so that when I get to where I want, I know that my foundation is very strong. Thank you, and I'm very grateful. The efforts that they just put really means a lot when you are trying to get experience, trying to find yourself out there. So it really just pushes you one step up, and it gives you so much hope that from here, anything is possible, and the doors are going to open because of that just one opportunity that gave you so much more when you really just didn't have much to put you in the map in the agricultural industry. As an intern, as a person who just started learning, developing new skills, I would really just encourage more companies to offer internship programs and encourage youth to apply also, to participate in research trainings and programs that would really just advance myself so that I can find my space in the agricultural sector and contribute to the growth and the sustainable agriculture.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we need a lot of these type of stories. It's about reaping what you plow. So what we do to trees, we also do to human beings. You invest in them, and then you get your returns. So imagine if we multiply this with thousands, hundreds, and all of that. And yeah, it's a wonderful story. We move on to the next item on our agenda. I often hear stories that money doesn't grow on trees. And a certain financial advisor of a certain former president once told him that when he kept on demanding, I want money, I want money. He said, hey man, money doesn't grow on trees. But it appears that it's possible that we can use certain forms of trees to generate income, to generate wealth, to feed ourselves. And Andrew Bennett is going to tell us about that. He's going to talk about the SACTA's finances for the year 2024. Andrew has been in the industry for 3 decades or more. And I recently heard a story about him that, he tried to disconnect himself from the real world, closed his cell phone, did what, and all of that. And he recently came back refreshed and all of that. So hopefully his numbers are going to be looking good. So he is by training an entomologist, and he has played a key role in the development and implementation of and launch of strategies in Africa for a variety of biotech traits, such as BT cotton, herbicide-tolerant maize, soybean, and cotton. And a jack of all trades. He's into marketing, but he's also a scientist, basically. Andrew, you are welcome to come and give us the numbers on whether we can actually grow money on trees.
Good afternoon, everybody. I apologize, we are running a little late. I'll do my best to catch up a little bit on what we have here. I'd like to present today the 2024 financial results overview of what we've been getting up to. I'd like to cover in this period just a little bit about SACTA's background. We can probably go over that quite quickly because we've heard a lot about that. How the levy is actually utilized. I think it's important to know the complications around the crop year versus the marketing season versus the financial year. And you can read the rest of what we're going to be covering there. So, as you know, we're a non-profit company, and our main responsibility is to administer the statutory levy on certain self-pollinated crops. So you can see there, we really support the breeding programs of the companies that are participating in the South African market in those particular crops. And then we also support transformation activities, mostly through enterprise development, skills development, and then certain socio-economic projects as well. Our financial year runs from the 1st of March to the 28th of February, and our organization and governance is just shown in that diagram quickly. We have a board of directors and a chairperson, and then myself and Sandile, who you will meet just now, the CEO and the transformation manager. We make use of a number of working groups where we thresh out more specific issues and problems. And then overall, we're supported by Agri-Managed Solutions, who provide us with a full full service of administrative services, if I can put it that way. Our board currently is 10 people. We allowed a board of up to 11, 2 representatives from Sansor, 2 from Grain South Africa, 1 from AgBiz Grain, and 2 ministerial appointees, and then 1 or 2 other folk on that board as well. So I'd just like to describe as well how the levy is utilized. So we collect the money, and then it's probably easier to understand if we take 100 Rand of levies that's been collected, how is that used up? So the statutory levy regulation makes provision for a 2.5% commission to be paid to the collectors of the levy, and then the balance of what's left gets split up 80-20 to, well, what's left, we take 20% of that, and that goes directly to transformation. That is also a statutory provision. We also take out our administrative costs, so that's really for the running of SACTA and funding AMS for their services as well. So in this particular example, this was a couple of years back, our admin costs were R2.93, but they've come down a lot as the pool of the levy has increased. That percentage has come down considerably. And then what's left gets distributed to the seed companies for investment in their breeding programs, and that's around 75, 76 odd rands out of every 100 Rand. Essentially, though, it's an 80-20 split, excluding the admin and commission costs. The other important thing to look at is how we manage with the crops, and here I'd like to just acknowledge Mr. Haynes, who set up this set of graphics to explain to me when I took over from him how the whole system works, and I still find this really, really useful. So if we look at soybean planting, that's normally around September, and it runs over Christmas, December and January, to harvesting in April, May the following year. The spring and winter wheat, though, all fits into 1 year, planting around April and harvesting towards the end of the year. So this is the actual stuff that the farmers do when they put the seed in the ground. However, the marketing season for those different commodities is somewhat different. So again, soybean is quite simple. It starts in March and ends in February, and it fits in with the financial year, so that makes our accounting really easy on that side. But on the winter grains, that becomes more complicated because it actually falls over 2 financial years, as you can see there. So what we try and do is make a distribution on the soybean levies around August, September each year, and then on the winter grain side, we try and make that distribution back to the seed companies by the end of the year. So that's normally late November, middle December. Again, the reporting period that we're looking at now is for the financial year that ended in February 2024. But again, on the winter grain sides, this takes up 2 parts of the levy season, if I can put it that way. And then on the soybean side, we are reporting on the year March 23 to Feb 24, and the levy during that period was 66 Rand per tonne. If you look at the upper part of the graph, you can see, because it falls over 2 marketing periods, the reporting period includes a period where we were collecting 32 Rand a tonne on wheat, and another period when we were collecting 33 Rand a tonne on wheat. So you can see some of the complications in there. Just for interest's sake as well, our current soybean levy that's been approved expires on the 28th of February 2025. So for the levy to continue, we've had to make an application for a new approval. That application has been done and it has been submitted. And this time around, it's a 3-year application over 3 seasons. And the tariffs for which we have applied are 70 Rand per tonne, 73 Rand per tonne, and 84 Rand per tonne going forward. Then in terms, we try to measure our efficiencies in terms of collecting the levy, how good are we at that? And when I say we, I'm referring to a large extent also to Agri-Managed Solutions, who are providing a large part of that service. What we do to do the calculation is we make use of SACTA, or the South African Grain Information Service, to determine what the delivery was into silos and storage facilities from the farmers. And we take that as 100%. We then see how much funding we've collected and divide that by the annual levy tariff to get the number of tonnes that we've collected the levy on, and then we calculate a percentage of that. So these are the percentages that are reflected here, and you can see in our last period, October 22 to September 23, our collection efficiency on wheat was 93%, same for barley, and in oats you'll see it was 102%. So again, this is not a perfect science, because sometimes we collect some of the levy during the new season, or the levy from the previous season in the new season. And so that alters the actual percentages. We're not completely comparing apples with apples. So what we normally see is where we have a year that we've had a very high collection percentage, the year prior to that tended to be a bit lower because we hadn't recorded that collection in that year. It was recorded in the following year. On the soybean side, which is where a lot of the big money is, our collection percentage, as you can see, is pretty good. Lowest has been 92%, but we've managed to edge that up towards 95% for this past period. So our thanks to our partners who assist us in this collection process. Then to look at the gross levy income in millions of rands, the red line there represents the total over the years, and then each of the bars represents what we've collected per crop. So in this last fiscal year, you'll see we have collected 63.6 million on wheat, 12.2 odd million on barley, almost 700,000 on oats, and then on soybeans we've collected just under 170 million. You can see that's a big jump from the previous season. So this reflects the collection on that 2.7 million tonne crop. And as I say, we had a 95% collection efficiency on that, so that generated this quite sizable increase in levy income. Then if we just look at our costs and how that works, so our costs are split really into two portions. There's the commission, the 2.5% that we pay to the collectors. That stays flat, and obviously the bigger the crop and the more we collect, the bigger that volume of monies or funding is concerned. And you can see that in 2023 we spent just under 4 million on commissions, and with the increased crop the past season that went up to 6.1 million. Our internal admin costs also rise a little bit, the bigger the crop, and that went up from 4.6 to 4.9 million. The graph on the right-hand side shows the percentages of those costs as a percentage of the gross levy income. So the green line is the fixed 2.5% over the years, and you can see our actual cost is dropping from around 2.8% down to 2% in the past season. So that's large. Even though we spent a bit more, that's as a function of the bigger crop that we compare ourselves against. Then in terms of the levy distribution to various seed companies, these presentations will be available to all of you, so don't worry too much about that. But the last winter distribution that we did, you can see that we distributed 53.7 million to wheat companies, 7.9 million to to barley breeding companies, 760,000 rand on the oats side, and 45,000 rand for lupins, giving a total of just over 62 million rand on the winter cereal side of things. The previous soybean distribution was 76.9 million rand, and that we made last year in August to the soybean companies. We have had our annual financial statements done, approved, and audited, and the fund available for distribution to soybean companies now, at the end of August, early September, is 147 million odd rands that will be split up between all the companies according to their market shares. A lot of this, I think, we've probably touched on already, and my thanks to the previous speakers that have alluded to the impact that SACTA has made. But just as a sort of summary, since 2016, we have distributed 287 million, that's before the 147 that's coming up, to soybean companies, 319 million to wheat breeding companies, 56 million to barley companies, and the rest you can see there. And the graph at the bottom is what Ferdy was also alluding to. We have had a number of new varieties registered, which we feel are contributing to the improvement in yields and certainly the choice that farmers have in producing soybeans and winter grains. I think one of the interesting things that we do need to touch on is the approval of new technologies and the confidence that the SACTA system, if I can put it that way, is giving to multinational companies and encouraging them to invest their new technologies and the costs that go with them in South Africa. So in the past couple of seasons, we've had a brand new soybean technology approved. This is Intacta Roundup Ready 2 Pro, which is a combination of insect control traits and weed or herbicide tolerant traits. A second technology, Conquesta E3, has been approved. It's gone through the regulatory system. It hasn't been commercialized yet. That will be coming up shortly. And then there are trials underway on a third technology called HB4, particularly with relation to soybean, and this is a stress tolerance kind of technology. And the initial results are looking quite good. I think Andre and Ferdy have both alluded to how markets have opened up for the soybean product. And I was very interested to hear that Andre reckoned a 3 million ton crop is what would be really good for South Africa. So we will continue to do our best to contribute to that. This really brings me to the end of my presentation. I just wanted to touch on transformation and set the stage for Sandile. So because the levy is a statutory levy, 20% of the net levy income must be allocated to transformation projects. And we do this strictly according to the National Agricultural Marketing Council's guidelines for transformation. With that, I'd just like to end off saying that our financial statements are available on our website for anybody that's interested, as well as any other kind of information. Some of the presentations we've done, the videos of this day's activities and the previous year's activities are also there if anybody wants to go back. You're also free to contact me at that email address or Beatrix from AMS at beatrix@agrimanage.co.za. So with that, I thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. We move on with our SACTA Information Day. The next speaker is also from SACTA. Sandile Mahlangu is a transformation manager at SACTA. He introduced himself earlier already on the video by making himself look like he's doing very important things. Sandile has been an agricultural economist for the past 10 years, And he has got passion for the stuff that he does, and he's interested in development, in transformation, and he was going to give us a short report on what has happened so far. Lucky is other people have already spoken about his work. So yeah, welcome, Sandile.
Good afternoon. As Mpumelelo said, I think I'm the luckiest because most people have covered a lot. For me, it's just to show you numbers and pictures, probably where I've been just as a form of M&E. So you see that we do visit those farmers. No, thank you. Okay. That would be the scope of my presentation. I will just try and share with you the transformation strategy. And one might say it's a moving post, but I think we are adjusting as we move. As Sandy had mentioned, it's a complex environment that we are in, but then one try and have, we said we just need to have a direction of where we want to get, and we will continue and make progress as we go. The second part will be I will share on transformation income and expenditure for the financial year 2024, and also comes the confusion of the production, but for now we're just reporting on the money spent in that financial year, and we can get into details if when was it planted and when was it harvested. Then I will also cover those pillars of which, as Andrew has said, we are guided by NAMC on those pillars, and give a bit of closing remarks, probably also inviting stakeholders as we always want to. The SACTA transformation strategy, as SACTA, we aim to contribute to more equitable and resilient agriculture sector. We have adopted a holistic strategy designed to be both proactive and responsive, reflecting our dedication to achieving impactful outcomes. And with the holistic, I think it's in terms of how we allow crop rotation, but also it's issues of we invite every stakeholder so we are able to assist a farmer or look at the farm as a whole. And with that, it's issues of training and service providers that work with us. We also expect them to be able to provide or secure a market for those farmers, but also try and train or assist or mentor those farmers that they are working with. At the core of our strategy is built on understanding that transformation is not a one-time event, but a continuous journey. And I think we're all agreeing that we probably need to understand that we just need to measure progress. We know where we're going, and it might not be possible for us if we want to say we'll only measure ourselves when a farmer is commercialized, but we need to appreciate those progress that we are seeing throughout. Are they improving those yields? Are they improving in terms of financial management? Are their production practices improving? And that, I think, also it's probably comforting to service providers that we are not only looking at the money coming back, but we are also looking at what we are doing with the farmer. The approach aims to promote sustainable development and ensure the prosperity of all stakeholders. We view our service providers and whoever that we work with as a stakeholder for us. It's not necessarily a money exchange or a transactional relationship, but it's more of the relationship that we are forming for us to be able to assist the farmer. As Andrew has said, the 20% of those collected levies are meant for transformation. And in those transformation activities or initiatives that SACTA, of which I will go into details and share what we do in each pillar or in each activity, we are guided by an NAMC transformation guidelines, which prescribe that. And most of these, they are not exactly saying you should use exact that amount, but it's just a guideline to say at least a certain percentage must go. And their guideline advised that at least 60% of the collected levies out of that 20% pool that you have, at least 60% must go into enterprise development, 18% into training and training and skill development. 17% can go into management controls. At least 5% of that should be for socio-economic development. We are constantly learning as SACTA, and I think also the platform provides us a learning opportunities to see how things, and in those, as we learn from other service providers, we are able to go and share with the other service providers how things are moving on the other side. We really appreciate the complexity of the space that we are in, and we are treating it as a complex space, but definitely also having a direction of where we want to go. I wanted to just share on the transformation income over the years from 2019 to 2024, but mainly maybe one wants to focus on the total amount that we have spent since 2019. It's about 181 million that we have spent, and at least 60% of that money is revolving in the economy. The reason for that is because SACTA is not providing grants, but we are providing soft loans. And our expectation is that even when a farmer has made a loss, but the farmer will try and recover, and we have a repayment plan so a farmer can be able to repay. But that's case by case on how that could be. But our assumption is that 60% of 180 million is circulating in the economy, improving lives in rural areas mainly, where these farmers are located. Maybe to be specific on the financial year 2024, we spent a total of 61 million, and most of it, of which was around 52 million, went into enterprise development. And with our enterprise development was both on loans, input production loans, but also on mechanization that we provided for farmers. We also did in terms of skill and training, we provided for bursaries, but we also did a bit of what we're piloting on in terms of business coaching for farmers that we are servicing. Our projection is that by next year we'll have around 48 million, of which is the financial year 2025 that we'll be able to spend in transformation. Hopefully, if the crop estimate changes and we see an increase in the crop that we'll collect on, this money will be more. And for transformation, then that becomes exciting for us because we can be able to be impactful in the space that we work in. I just wanted to share, as I had said, with NAMC transformation guideline, it's just those guidelines, as the name says. For SACTA, our percentage, about 86% of the money that we spend in the financial year 2024, 86% of that was for enterprise development. And in terms of enterprise development, we have seen impact on the ground. We have already started seeing a lot of farmers making profits, and soya has been playing a big role in that, whether in terms of when they crop rotate and the yields for maize are improving over those years, but also we are seeing farmers being able to reinvest in their own businesses. Maybe now to get into details on what we go about in terms of enterprise development and what we really did in those. Just a brief background on what enterprise development means for SACTA. We are achieving this enterprise development through a provision of 3-year input finance and 5-year mechanization finance. Both of these loans are soft loans. They are non-interest-bearing loans, and they are advanced to a farmer, but we advance them through a service provider who then works with those farmers, and their expectation from our side on what a service provider should be and how a service provider should work. But like I said, then some of the things that we have introduced into the enterprise development is the business coaching and mentorship that we do. As much as we expect service provider to always be doing mentorship, but we are also willing to be funding when it's a structured or a planned mentorship or a business coaching that the service provider can provide. Activities, as I've said, we provide them through service providers. Maybe a bit of context, we service providers to us are these stakeholders that help us with technical know-how or also be able to identify farmers, find a market for those farmers, and be able to train them as well in the process. As SACTA, we focus on the quality of a farmer or the impact we have with each farmer. We are not more on the numbers. We better have 10 or less farmers, but the impact and the change of which is a true transformation of a farmer than just to be throwing money around. If we can see a true transformation, we are happy with that. The number is not much of an importance on our side. Yes, we know it is important to reach a wider audience, but it's not necessarily what we focus on. What we focus on is the impact that we have on the farmer or where we are involved. All this is informed by farming needs and the fact that we collect levies from multiple crops. That's why we also had made a request, or our approach is that we allow crop rotation from a farmer. A farmer can be able to crop rotate with any of the crops that we collect levies on, but even if it's not a crop that we collect levy on. I think the approach here is an understanding that the farmer can never be successful with one crop. And also, depending on each season and each need, a farmer then will adjust. Together, they will be communicating with the service provider, but then they will be able to plant what is necessary and what will be profitable for that season. We also do monitoring and evaluation. I think also the platform that we are establishing currently become part of our monitoring and evaluation, but we are also doing farm visits. The farm visits, we also have regular meetings with service providers, and we require frequent reporting from them. These are the numbers on enterprise development. Soya contributed about 47% in the total land that we supported with each farmer. We had planted money which SACTA spent was about 7.2 hectares that we supported. In total, we had 119 farmers, and some of, like Sandy had raised, some of those discretion in terms of why less farmers. I think it's also because when we count number of farmers based on the location where they are, we have farmers in Taung area where we treat them as individual farmers, but because they farm in the same irrigation scheme, you almost, when you get your GPS, it's like it's a one farmer. But for us as SACTA, we treat them as individuals because that's how we also make sure that their loans, it's not a group loan, it's an individual farmer loan, so they can be able to also break out of the group and grow on their own. In terms of demographics, we're still struggling, but we are dedicated in trying and change the status quo. There's more men than females, but what is exciting is to see about 18% of these farmers that we support are young people, and we're still trying and encouraging service providers to make sure that more young people are coming. But also we're seeing a good trend where succession plans by older farmers are intentional, and we are seeing farmers bringing in their young kids in order for them to be farming. In terms of skill and training, as SACTA, as it has been mentioned, we do postgraduate and focusing on technology and breeding, but we also we have expanded currently to try and fund TVET in-service training. And this was because there was a need where students from agricultural colleges are struggling to get an in-service training where they could be placed. And we tried and intervene in that so we can assist with that. Just want to go into the numbers. For the financial year 2024, we had about 12 students who were funded on the bursary, 6 interns, of which they are here, and probably we can then, during tea break, we can interact with them. Then the TVET in-service training, we had 6 for the financial year 2024, and now they have went back to campus to finish their diplomas. We have seen success in this, and several students have graduated with PhDs and masters. And those who are interested, please encourage those students. They can go into the agrimanage.co.za website for them to apply. With socio-economic, that pillar, we try, our aim is to see living standards improving in grain, mainly in grain-producing areas, because the levy is being contributed by grain-producing farmers. Then we try and focus in those grain. Our main focus has been on water supply and sanitation. We also do food gardens and small-scale grain production. I will share on the sanitation. We recently had a project, as you can see on those pictures, to try. It's a project which is mainly driven by Rotary. It's on dignity toilets, and we try and eradicate pit latrine toilets. We are also involved in the subsistence small-scale maize production in collaboration with OSC, and I think we had appreciated that we are in collaboration, but we definitely need them to start. We had funded with them together a soybean production, which also included a value addition training for these farmers to be able to add value. My closing remarks, as my time is up, we continue to seek out partners and collaborators to join us in this important endeavor. We are committed to ensuring that all initiatives are guided by real needs, supported by data, and executed with meticulous care. By that, we're saying to those who contribute to the levy, we appreciate, and development is a necessary space, but also we are not just doing it, not being conscious. We are really spending your money with care, and we are spending it on reputable service providers, and those that are not servicing us, we will definitely cut the ties if need be. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandile, for the high-level and yet informative brief on what you guys are doing on transformation. I wish next time we sit here, we can talk about like how these numbers are doubling. We need to be motivated that actually you're not sitting on one spot. We're moving forward. But there's a next video that has to be played to demonstrate aspects of what you were talking about, just a snapshot of what you were talking about. Can we play that video, and then after that I'll assemble the next panel. Thank you.
I am Anna Boreni. I am 26 years old. I hold a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture, specializing in agronomy, which I obtained from the University of Venda. My journey from my studies, well, I did agronomy, which is more like field-related work. In my undergrad research, I had to plant chickpeas, grow them and monitor them through the growing stage until harvesting stage, and do lab work and processing. So my work was more based in field than in the lab. I applied for the bursary of SACTA to do an internship at FABI because I was looking for an experimental opportunity to apply the previously acquired knowledge in plant health.
The Forestry and Agricultural Biotechnology Institute at the University of Pretoria started a collaboration with SACTA for funding. It came about with the understanding that there's a need for skill development in biosecurity and phytosanitation. So the internship program falls under the umbrella of the Center of Excellence in Plant Health Biotechnology. So our internship, it's actually a broader internship. It's the internship in phytosanitation and biosecurity. This internship program is funded by various funding agencies, of which SACTA is one. So in the past and this year, in 2024, SACTA has provided bursaries for interns. These bursaries are used as a stipend to pay the interns. The interns conduct research in our labs under the supervision of qualified researchers. By doing so, they're gaining experience in research in 1 year. The vision is that they will be further funded by SACTA and other funding agencies by continuing in a master's degree or a PhD degree. If they leave the university, they will be equipped with skills that they can apply in industry.
Through this internship at Fabi, I've learned a lot and I'm still learning. So far, I've learned some laboratory techniques that includes doing a PCR, doing DNA extraction, and also running a gel. We also do field trips. That includes collecting samples from the field and also doing pest monitoring on field. So far, I've been to agricultural fields and also forestry fields. So far I've taken a scientific writing course at scientific writing and communication, which I have successfully completed.
South Africa in general lacks skilled researchers in various domains. There are domains that have more researchers due to the attractiveness of those research fields. However, in this country, I think there's a huge lack of research or trained young researchers in the agricultural domain and specifically in plant pathology. So I think there's a great need to train students to continue with postgraduate research, specifically in plant pathology, in various domains of plant pathology. This will increase the research capacity in South Africa in the domain of plant pathology and generally in plant health.
Anna wants to be a researcher, yes. I think this environment has really motivated me to become a researcher because we work with different things and I get to get information on different research trends every week. We have Monday morning meetings and Thursday morning meetings wherein researchers come and present their work. So during those sessions, I get to see people doing groundbreaking researches and I think I'll take that path. I'm interested more in plant pathology.
We hope that the students, one thing that we hope they can take away or achieve out of this or out of this program is just to make sure that they have inspired to learn more, continue learning, but also just to have that deep appreciation in terms of their personal and professional skills as well. But for the industry, one hopes that they'll bring new perspective into the industry, innovative ideas, and as well just challenge the status quo and force collaboration and inclusivity. These are guys who are coming in a new, most of them are young, but we're hoping that they will definitely challenge the status quo and make sure that the industry is welcoming to everyone, but make sure that the industry is sustainable and we can have a long-term success and the competitiveness of this sector.
Well, I feel like doing an internship here, it's equipping me with relevant skills that I can take into transformative researches. Like I've highlighted that I want to go into research. So I feel like with the skills and the knowledge that I'm getting here, and also not forgetting networking with researchers and scientists, so I think it's putting me in a position where I can go into doing research in plant pathology.
We have many success stories with our interns. Some of our interns continued in the industry where they're working and are very successful. Some of the interns even stayed in Fabi, the institute, where they are working on in full-time. But then on a personal level, I think what we see with our interns is the huge personal growth that they show after 1 year. The purpose of the internship is to bring students with honors degrees or master's degrees from various universities in South Africa, typically from more rural areas. The students have to adapt to this new city, big city life, to a huge university, all the constraints and all the effects that they experience personally, and to see how they start and how they end with a lot of confidence and a lot of self-motivation, knowing where I want to be next year, what I want to do. I think that is, in addition to our aim of them being trained, is an additional success in this program. If I have one message for SACTA is thank you for your support and continuous support. The funding is money, but what you give us is you are enabling us to train students and people that can make a contribution to agriculture in South Africa.
The message that I have for SACTA is a message of gratitude, that I'm very grateful for they have started this program, and also making sure that they're giving us an opportunity to kickstart our careers. Because now as graduates, you need that first employer who's gonna recognize you and give you the opportunity to sort of like apply what you have learned. And SACTA is doing exactly that in partnership with Fabi. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity.
All right, thank you so much for this inspiring video. I saw somebody smiling who looks like this person who was on TV. Hopefully we'll have time to interact with you. I think I spotted the right person. I have a suspicion. Yeah, it's very important that we have people doing PhDs, and even after having a PhD, you learn further. It reminds me of what the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, the new one, recently said in an interview with News 24. She said that she stays grounded because she's a PhD, commercial law, and she says education helps her to get grounded because the more she learned, the more she realized she knows little. And that's one of the most important attributes of any educated person. You humble yourself, and the more humble you are, the more you want to learn more, and the more you become competitive. If you have skilled population, the country becomes competitive wherever they are in whatever industry. In this case, obviously, we're talking about agriculture and the grain sector particularly. So this is quite an inspiring story, very impressive. We move on on our information day to the next session. This section, I'm not going to chair it. It's going to be chaired by John van Rooyen, who also chairs SACTA. So he's double dipping today. I'm not going to introduce him. I introduced him earlier. And then in the panel is also Erhard Bredenham. He is an agri-businessman, a very specialist, coming mostly from the poultry sector. And he has, at some point, he was chairman of the Animal Feed Manufacturers Association, I think for about 6 years. And at some point, currently, he's a board chairperson of the Protein Research Foundation and chairman of the technology committee there and vice chairperson of the All Seeds Advisory Committee. Yeah. So you're welcome to the panel. And then we have, Sandile needs no introduction. We have Beatrix de Wit, who is the CEO of the Agri-Manage Solutions. They provide an entire admin suites or services for the agri sector. So if you don't have appetite for admin and you want to do the real work, just farm it out to her. She will do it for you. So she's a specialist in corporate governance, and she does the entire value chain that is associated with administration. And then Andrew Bennett, I've introduced him earlier, so he needs no introduction. And then there's Cornelo, who's the deputy chair of SACTA, and is also head of the Applied Economics and Membership Services at Agri SA. Gentlemen, Grain South Africa. Yeah. Sorry, my apologies. Grain South Africa.
No worry.
Yeah, well, I was trying to do the job for Dion and I failed. So Dion, this is your panel. And we didn't open up questions to Sandile's session and also to Andrew's session. So the reason is that there was going to be this panel. So if there was any question to the two, please opportunistically use this panel to pose it. But they are going to reflect on the year that has gone past and looking ahead. I'd be more interested in hearing them looking ahead, but that's for Dion to decide. So we leave it there. I'll hold the mic in case there's someone who wants to ask the question thing. But I leave it to you, Dion, to proceed.
Yes, thank you very much. I think the way we will proceed, and this is obviously the graveyard session, but this will not be anywhere near the length of a SACTA board meeting, I promise you that. We've got 19 minutes and 49 seconds to go. So what I'd like to do is just start off by asking each of the panel members, and I sort of agree with our facilitator that maybe just your view of the future relating to SACTA, and maybe starting with, and when we say the future, maybe the year ahead is a good start. How do you see the year ahead? And we forget about the past for now. Thanks, Andile. We'll start off with you.
No, thanks, Dion. I think looking ahead for transformation, we're seeing SACTA playing a major role, but also being strategic in terms of avoiding the challenges that we have learned, and moving forward for us is how do we improve and find right partners. And I think the future for us says to those who have inputs, please come forward and we can start discussing and see how we build. But definitely we're looking ahead in contributing more, and not contributing in terms of money, but also contributing in terms of providing direction and strategy even for other transformation programs.
Thank you. Beatrix, just on AMS.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yes, from administration purposes point of view, we're very excited. We're busy developing a portal that will be hosted on the website to assist us with the levy collections and the information that we require for the levy collection processes and procedures. It will also assist us to document and to get all the cultivar information that we require for the distribution of the levies at the end of the day. So yes, we're very excited with that process. We're working closely with the people on ground level to see what their challenges are and to know what we need to develop so that we can move away from the paper system and get everything more electronically and get the information out there so that people can access the information more regularly. Thank you.
Beatrix, can I maybe ask who will have access to that portal?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we will have various different access levels. For instance, the Board of Directors will be able to pull reports as and when required. And then also the constituencies that's paying the levies, they will also have login access. So the information will be held secure on the portal, and then there will be various access levels for the various contributors towards the levy.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, that's the more we move down this way, the less things there are to say about the future.
Don't say all my stuff.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, I think we've had a challenging year that's behind us in the sense that it was very dry and so on. So I'm very hopeful that La Nina will make itself felt, and that there will be some relief amongst the producers going forward. However, that is not something we have control over. Just in terms of SACTA and what they do, I'm looking forward to the soybean levy being approved by the new Minister of Agriculture, and I would be very hopeful that at some point we could maybe have a meeting with the new Minister and his staff and inform them about what SACTA is getting up to. Thank you.
Thanks, Corné.
Hope that wasn't yours.
Thank you for that, Andrew. Thanks, Chairman. I think putting my two hats on, firstly, being a representative of grain farmers, we hope that we see the new varieties and the new technologies coming to the market in the commercial space. We know it's in the pipeline. We've seen results internationally what the new technologies and varieties brings to the market. So that's what I'm excited about. The second one for our farmers is we need to develop a performance criteria where we can measure the success of SACTA. I think we've seen it with Prof. Verdi's presentation as well. and Andrews alike, that there is tangible advantages. But I think for a farmer that also keeps on paying, he needs to keep on seeing the advantages. So we need to be able to sell that and keep on selling the advantage that the breeding and technology levy brings to the farmers. Putting my SACTA hat on, I think growing in our funds and our responsibility of dealing with money, I think we need to make sure that we are having proper systems in place to direct the money in the right directions.
Thanks, Corné. I think important points. You obviously have a situation where you've got farmers who are paying the levies and I think have bought into the system. And then on the other side, you've got the seed companies and the technology companies that have to expend, I'm saying, millions of dollars of research. And on a lot of the technology, it's worldwide technology. So you're talking dollars in the light of a declining rand. So it's expensive research. So one of SACTA's things is to be the go-between, the pacifier, the facilitator between the different groups, and to actually see there must be a win-win situation, an advantage to both sides, and actually to more parties too at the end of the day. And that's what we really focus on, Corné. I'm glad you brought that up. Errol?
I think it's very commendable the fact that the parties have agreed, everybody's agreed to carry on with the levy, because I think the fruits that we're going to bear from that are going to come even more so in the near future, because there's been a lot of money and time spent on getting the new cultivars here and the new technology here, and I think it's carrying momentum that we're going to reap the benefits only in the next couple of years. So that makes the measurement a little bit more complicated. And soybean production in South Africa for a whole value chain had such a huge positive impact that everybody's waiting in anticipation for it to grow. And it's been mentioned a few times today that without the improvements in technology and yields, that we will not be able to sustain the industry. So I think that's a critical part and role that we have to assist in playing.
Thank you very much to the panel. And we'll throw it open for questions. And if there are any questions from the floor.
I've got your mic here. Anyone want to ask a question?
Or comments, for that matter.
Question not addressed to someone specifically, but looking at the production numbers, I think the levies will come from a high to probably the current numbers, maybe 30% reduction. Where will the impact felt most in terms of the seed developers in targeting them?
Andrew, that's probably yours, eh?
Yes. I'll do my best on that. So just in terms of the impact of in the reduction of hectares or the crop size, just remember that the current levy per tonne that we're collecting is much higher than the previous year. So there will be a bit of even though we have less tonnes collected, the levy is higher. So there will be a bit of a compensating effect there. In terms of the seed companies, well, it's very difficult to speak for them, but they need to continue with the programs that they have established already. And being party to some of the, let's say, discussions or negotiations earlier in the year, they are really looking on a more long-term basis. They want to, they see their investment as being fruitful over a longer term. They can't invest for 1 year and hope to see a result. So the impact on that, I think, is they just need to continue with the programs that they have. They need to continue improving the varieties they have. bring the technologies to market. There's a lot of potential new technologies that are coming, and we just hope that we see those in the market going forward. Hope that answers your question. I know it makes your GM certificates more complicated.
Thank you. Can we move on to the next one? We're a bit limited for time. Anything else?
We're just getting a mic.
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much, everyone. Ishmael is speaking. I was just checking the new variety list for the past from 2018. I see soybeans is moving with a high speed. And maybe you can share with me specifically what is the reason for that. And I see wheat is also fluctuating for the past 5 years or 6 years. And maybe the reason being that, just highlight the second one is that in terms of transformation, I know that this is a free interest loan. What is the success in terms of repayment? Maybe another question also is that if a farmer is failing to repay, what is the measures are in place to make sure that that farmer pays? Or maybe SACTA is writing off the loan. And also my other question is that this money, let's say for example, the success of repayment is very high. What are you going to do with this money when it reaches $1 billion? Thank you very much.
Sandile, shall we put you on the transformation questions?
I can maybe answer the first one.
Okay,
on the
maybe you can answer the
progress
first one, okay.
of the new varieties between soybeans and wheat. I think with soybeans we've seen a much faster improvement and introduction of new varieties in South Africa, because we can do introductions from countries like Argentina and Brazil, and most of them suit very well in South Africa as well. And that's also linked with the new technology. So the increase there, we've seen the numbers that Andrew showed is more than 60
new companies,
new varieties. We've seen new companies also coming to the fore, both on varieties, genetics, and technology. With wheat, it makes it a bit different. Wheat is not so easy to do introductions from other countries, so you have to breed locally, and we've also got a higher barrier of entry for new varieties. We've got certain quality parameters that we have to meet to release a new variety in wheat in South Africa. So the introduction of new varieties will be a bit slower than we've seen in soybeans. But with that taken into account, the growth in wheat has also been very positive.
Thanks, Corné. Sandile?
No, thank you, Dion. On the issue of what happened when the farmer is not able to pay, we treat it case by case. Firstly, we try and establish what caused the failure. And because we work with the service provider, but obviously then when a farmer is not paid, what we do, if there's still a business case because it was beyond farmers' control, we reinvest. We put more money, but with a better or planned and agreed on repayment plan. We won't necessarily say it's a 3-year, because we understand the farmer still needs to catch up also on other. Then we have a special payment plan, but like I said, it's a case-by-case situation. We try by all means and recoup the money. One, it's because we are handling seed and farmers' money. We're trying to go, but also we don't want to put a developing farmer at a disadvantage. We are collecting, and as you're saying, it's a revolving fund. It keeps on increasing. What's the plan? We're not yet there, but we started thinking. 2 approaches we're thinking we should implement. One is to try at what rate will the successful farmer, can we convert the loan into a grant? We're trying to incentivize and make sure that this farmer who has been successful and has been part of SACTA, how then do we convert a certain percentage of that loan into a grant? But secondly, the other approach we're thinking of is how can we use this money that has been revolving and the farmer is out of the program? How can we use this to be a guarantee fund that we can send to a commercial bank where a farmer would have not been able to access more money or be able to purchase a mechanization, and you use that money to say, I'm going to shield and protect and provide a caution for this farmer who come to borrow your commercial loan, whatever interest that you agreed on, but we're trying to allow then more farmers too. I think those are two approaches, but definitely the board has started thinking about, yes, the money is growing, as much as we will want to reach more people, but the money will keep on growing, and it's not the money you will want to remain with it because it's for development. But also what we don't want to do and what we understand is that there's still a need. The more money you have, other farmers would have progressed to a better situation. There's still new farmers who are coming in that we can help. But the two approaches in terms of how then do one convert it into a grant based on the success, and success using different indicators, not only looking at one in terms of repayment, we are also looking at the progress. As I've mentioned, we are measuring progress as well, but then also how do we provide a guarantee fund. On the success, we have only reached two maturing with two service providers in terms of success, at least a 60% success, and most of our losses are actually not necessarily because our farmers are failing, but the season was bad in other areas, but also there were other challenges. And I think other farmers who even made loss where we are willing, and they actually have signed the acknowledgement of that to say, I know what. And I think that's our success. It's around 60%. That's an average. Definitely if you go into each service provider or each farmer, and some of these farmers, those losses and the success, a farmer was able to repay both the two seasons in these 3 years, but he just failed when we had to recollect, and then he could not make profit.
Thanks, Sandile.
I've got two questions here. Actually, one is a comment coming from Dr. Langa Simela. She's at APSA. She says, actually, this is a comment and a suggestion. She says, around about 2014, the government, that's the Department of Agriculture and the Land Bank, they initiated an exercise where they were to establish what was called Integrated Development Finance Policy Framework. And she's asking what has happened to it. And it was for the developing sector, and the whole idea was to also avoid double dipping, because there are so many schemes that are targeted at the developing sector. So I think she's trying to say it's something that you have to have a look at as part of your transformation project. Have a look at it and see if somewhere it was concluded or not concluded, but it's something worth looking at it. The other question, and now this is a question, can SACTA consider factoring a drought relief component into the levy, allocating 5 to 10% of the collected levies to support farmers during times of drought and other extreme weather conditions?
Do you, Andrew?
I think between Sandile and I, we can probably, I think that's a great idea. And in fact, and Sandile can maybe expand on this as well, we've actually been looking at insurance. And insurance in agriculture is extremely expensive. So in many cases, farmers are not insuring themselves sufficiently. But I think this question and topic is all related, and it would be really good to see if we can, one, find some additional funders that maybe operate in the insurance space that can make a contribution, or as your question has suggested, maybe we get involved in that space as well, where we put some funding aside either to fund insurance or as a kind of a pool to counter the impacts of drought. Yeah. But Sandile, yeah.
Maybe.
Yes, I agree, and I think what we did, because we're expecting that it was a dry season, probably most of our service providers will tell, we kind of close the tap a bit in terms of giving them more money because we're expecting that the drought will come, and we're already planning towards how are we going to relieve the farmers that we have in the program. That's why we didn't take any new farmers for the coming season, because we want to rescue the farmers we have. But maybe it's worth looking at it as a drought specific than saying you will rescue and say, how do I excuse a certain percentage of your loan and because of the challenges that you faced.
Pumelelo, have you got any other more online?
Maybe we can take the last one because we're running out of time. Is there any last question? Oh, there at the end. Okay. If there's any more ones, then it's going to be...
This could be a complicated one.
I'll ask three simple ones then in that case. Dion, yes, so on the objective criteria for testing, and I'm looking at Erard specifically there, we used to have the ARC to test cultivars, compare them against each other. Much of that is a little bit of a challenge. Does SACTA foresee a situation where we'll be doing objective testing? Remember, this is public funding by an institution to see whether all of these cultivars, it's not only the quantity of different cultivars, but also the quality of the cultivars. That's one question. The second one is on the whole NBT and GMO debate. So this is about technology creation. One of the biggest challenges that we currently got is that NBTs go under a difficult regulatory regime in South Africa. What is SACTA doing there? Are you putting money aside and supporting industry efforts to help us to allow NBT so that we have access to the cutting edge technology? And the last question is, amongst the farmers, it's often said that the Americans and the South Americans have all kinds of funky new technologies and things that they have already and we don't have it yet. We are paying for this. But those things we know of because we go and visit our compatriots in other countries and we see that they've got some new genes that we don't, yet we pay for this. What is happening there?
I'm happy to quickly respond on
Yeah,
some
please,
of those. And I'm particularly referring to soybeans at the moment. I think the cultivar evaluation trials are national. That's funded by the World Seed Advisory Committee and by the ARC 50-50. I think it's really done. It's done in a quality way with quality results and independently. So I would expect that I'm under the impression that the industry is happy with those, and if not, then we need to explore that in a bigger way. And as has been pointed out, that I think the only negative, there's been so many new ones thrown in that we first have to sort out the good from the bad, and hopefully that can assist producers in making the right decisions. I think that's really where we are. When it comes to South America, I think, and Brazil and Arge, from a technology point of view, we certainly, there is of course got to bear in mind the regulatory process in terms of getting that new technology approved and registered. But certainly I don't think there's a big delay in terms of that to our knowledge, and we do try, as you say, to keep up to date with exactly what's happening there and what technologies they're using.
Do you want to talk about the NBTs?
I think I'm very glad you raised the NBTs, because I think it's probably one of the biggest challenges that we face at the moment as an industry, not only soybeans but across the board, because it's going to be in everything, that in all the technologies that we're going to need in the country and going to be receiving from a new seed technology point of view, or any new seed for that matter. So it could be a barrier, and unfortunately or fortunately, the companies that are involved in the seed industry are very ethical, and so they won't bypass any laws or regulations, and that's to our is a challenge that we're going to have to face, and hopefully the government changes their view on that issue as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Perhaps.
Thanks. Yes, Andrew.
I could also just make a comment. As much as I would love for SACTA to get involved and push the boundaries, especially on the NBT stuff, we are, after all, the Cultivar and Technology Agency. SACTA is strictly an administrative organization administering a statutory levy. So we would need, we have a board that represents the seed industry as well as the producers. Perhaps we could be a supportive body for any activity that's taking place in this regard, but I don't think it would be within our mandate to take the lead in some of these things, much as I would love to. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's our fight.
Well, it'd be nice to fight. We'll help fight the fight.
Is there anything else? And I think we've run out of time, basically. Yeah.
Being extraordinarily generous. He's going to ask one question. I guarantee you, it's going to be quick.
What about half a question?
Thank you, Chair. I think the question that was raised there is very important. Is this variety list available somewhere of this release cultivars? Yes. And so that we check the objectivity of it, because farmers are attracted to the previous technology. So as the technology is being introduced, can that be made available somewhere in the website? Maybe I'm not aware of them, but we need to take cognizance of these new varieties. My question actually, Chair, is that is SACTA having exit plan for supporting farmers, or is evergreen forever in terms of this transformation levy? Is this farmers that are there for life, or there's a specific exit strategy that is measured with commercialization? Because it's very important that as we move into master plan, SACTA cannot just work outside that. So we must be able to know what is our successes, and the people must exit, because we need to, the main aim is to commercialize farmers, become commercial farmers. That's my understanding. So do you have a specific exit strategy? And also maybe how do you make sure that those who are supported are not also benefiting through other instruments like blended finance? I don't know what to do in terms of evaluating the farmers, but perhaps my specific question is about the exit strategy for those farmers who are supported. Thank you.
Who wants to take that?
I'm happy to take a shot, or do you want to go and I'll support you?
Okay. We don't necessarily have an exit strategy, but what we have, it's measurement of success for each farmer. What we did is, because we're working with different service providers, we request from them on where is the end goal with that farmer, and you must draw a commercialization path for each farmer, which then allow us to say, based on this, when you have reached that point, that's when we will exit. But in terms of also, are we working in isolation? No, we're not. We recently, and we're actually key in making sure that the production scheme for grains, we organize almost a lot of those participants, because we wanted to be in that. One, in order for us to be able to see who's playing in the space so we can partner with them. But the double dipping is still a challenge for us. And the reason it's a challenge is because no one wants to share their data. Now it becomes difficult, each farmer, but for us as SACTA, we don't fund a farmer from different service providers. If we fund them through SACRA, it will be only for SACRA, but we're hoping, the reason we also were interested in the platform and what Andrew said, that we are inviting more partners into it, it's because we're hoping from the platform we'll be able to see that there's this enterprise, there's this guy who has been funded by the other company, and then we should not fund separately. If we were to co-fund, it becomes easier because then the terms are clear on who does what.
Thank you. I think that's it.
All
We have come to the end of the information session, and I'd like the panel to take your seat in the audience, and then I'll ask Dion to come. Dion, you gonna come here, or I think you should come here.
I can stand here, I can do anything.
No, at least if you come here, we can shake hands and close the session. I think you should do it steady.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. And I think the panel has probably put you a bit in the picture of the type of challenges that we face very often, and I think it comes up in the questions. Nothing is easy. And actually, on the transformation side, there are very many challenges, and we're always open to advice and a better way of doing things than we're doing them. But one of your challenges is obviously a farmer enjoys, I'm saying, free credit for a while, and now you've got to transition them to a stage where, I'm glad you brought that up, because then you've got to transition them to actually paying interest. And that might just put them below the line again. So that makes it a very big challenge. We're having meetings with various institutions, and I'm hoping we're going to get to government too soon and just see how one can actually work together on finding not the ideal, but finding workable solutions for all these challenges. But in the interim, as Sandila says, we try not to throw farmers under a bus. If a guy is bringing his side and he's actually, we can see progress, then we try and sustain him until we're sure he can carry on. But that's very much in conjunction with the service providers. We've spoken about the challenges on the commercial side, and I think we've all got some insight there. That our challenges are also the South African farmer challenges, South Africa's place in the international community and in trading. I think our farmers have to be competitive internationally, especially if we start producing 3 million tons of soybeans. So, you've got to be able to compete profitably on the international markets, and that, in a lot of cases, takes scale. So you'll see your commercial farmers have become bigger and bigger. How we transition our smallholder farmers to actually also be profitable, and I'm not negative because I've been around Africa a lot in one of my previous jobs, and there are success stories of smallholder farmers in Africa, but it's a different dynamic, and it's a different structure, and it's different financial. It might be diversification, you see it often. And that's why SACTA is also not strictly funding, and with the approval of the NAMC, we look at the farmer's enterprise and then assist them. We don't say we're not going to assist you for cattle, but we're going to assist you for soybeans only. So we look at his whole package. But anyway, without further ado, I just want to extend my sincere thanks to the speakers. I think we had very good speakers. My sincere thanks to the panel. I think that's gone very well. And I'm sorry that we were intimidated by Brand Republic's big red sign at front here that says time up. And I wish we could actually turn it around to the audience. But maybe next time we'll put another one up there. But thanks again, and I also would like to extend our special thanks to Zandile, Andrew, Beatrix, and the team from AMS who've actually got this together for us and worked with Brand Republic in making it a success. And really, to everybody that's been online and attending, what SACTA is doing is actually a team effort that goes way beyond the walls of SACTA, and we appreciate every bit of support and input that we can get. Go well for those who've got to drive safely, and for those who would like to bath tonight, I hope there's water in all parts of Tswane. Thank you very much.